Something's in your room, you can't move, you can't speak. It's a horrible, horrible feeling.
You know, you're looking out into the darkness and then you see a figure, but it's darker than the darkness.
I just get this like really creepy feeling, and I see this like shadowy, demon-looking figure in the front seat of the car.
She used to come into my room at night and stand right by my bed, and I just was petrified.
I remember I saw something fly by my bedroom window. We heard the bathroom door shut. So then we looked out my bedroom window down the hallway, and the bathroom door was wide open.
So we came around the bend and we saw eye shine. This thing stood up. I mean, it stood up, and it had high pointed ears. It had a snout, had a long arm, and it grabbed the deer.
What?
Okay, guys, I am super excited to welcome our next guest to Let's Get Freaky. We have got Chris Meek with us today from Scottish Paranormal Podcast. How are you, sir?
I'm good, thanks, Tommy. Yeah, how's yourself?
Very well, thank you. I'm excited to have you on the show, man.
That's good to be here, man. Cheers for inviting me on.
You live in one of the most beautiful parts of the UK. I was recently there in Edinburgh, and man, what a place.
Well, that's good. Good. A good bit of drinking session going on up there.
Yeah, for sure. For sure, man.
A good few pubs up there. Good few places. I mean, there is, as I was saying to you earlier on, I kind of stay equidistant roughly between Edinburgh and Glasgow. So I'm in the middle. So we get the best of both cities.
Yeah,
which is good. But I'm more akin to going to Edinburgh because it's just the train link is easier for there as well. So that was back in the day. That's where I used to go for my nights out and stuff like that. Edinburgh, Bathgate, things like that. So all good. But next visit up, you're coming up, just give us a shout, man. We'll take you to some of the spots. You know what I mean?
Awesome, man. Because I know there's obviously a lot of paranormal history in Edinburgh, and I wanted to check that out, but I was on a stag do, so I couldn't do too much of that.
Yeah.
So yeah, man, we'd love to come down there with you. Have a few beers. Yeah,
there's loads of stuff in Edinburgh in regards to I mean there's ghost tours. There's tours of the city chambers and stuff underneath it, like kind of catacombs and stuff like that. I'm actually getting a guest coming on soon who does ghost tours from Edinburgh. Some quite interesting stories he's got. But yeah, there's quite a lot of things like that in Edinburgh. There's another place, Mary Queen's Close. It's another place you can go, and you go way underground, and there's like places they had during where the plague was on and all that kind of stuff as well.
Oh, wow.
But it's amazing, some of the stuff. But it's good. I mean, as I say, I'm not too far from there, but where I stay as well, as you said, there's paranormal activity. You think it's everywhere, you know what I mean? But it's no, there is places where it's more akin than others. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure, man. There's definitely areas that seem to have, for whatever reason, more activity. Yeah. For whatever that reason is.
Well, I mean, that's kind of how I started with the podcast. I was like a COVID podcaster, starting off that. I don't know if you were yourself. You start during COVID?
Well, COVID, that was probably the reason why I wanted to do a podcast. And I think when COVID happened, it sort of panicked us. We realised we didn't have tomorrow anymore. Yeah. I feel. So we moved away from London. I started the podcast that I'd always wanted to do. Yeah. So I've got to thank COVID for that, really.
I was pretty much the same. I mean, so that's kind of, can you mark any stories in regards to like starting the podcast? For example, I had a good interest in the paranormal for years, since I was young. I mean, just like yourself, reading UFO books and ghost books, and used to have the old kind of blue binder of the Unexplained, it was called. I used to have to collect it and you put it in a binder. Can remember them. But I mean, I used to read quite a lot of stuff in UFOs and things like that. Mainly, I mean, quite a lot. My main kind of interest was like UFOs and stuff. But in regards to that, it kind of it goes into a lot of other subjects, because it just bleeds into the subjects. It bleeds into metaphysics and stuff like that as well, and consciousness and everything else. But I mean, I'd kind of eat away at reading books, watching documentaries like everybody else who's got an interest in it.
Yeah.
And then I came away from it a wee bit. Came away from it. Still read the odd books. Still kind of listened to the odd podcast and stuff. And I started listening to more podcasts during COVID. And I knew I had like some stories for the family when I was like back in the day, which are at the back of my mind, and only a few people knew about some of the stories and stuff like that. And I had an interest in. I started kind of following Paul Sinclair quite a lot in East and North Yorkshire, and I had a good interest in some of the stuff he was putting out and some of the kind of multi-phenomena material he was putting out in his area over like a good number of years that he was researching. And I was wanting to go and visit there and stuff like that. And I was kind of like, I kind of thought, I was like scratching my head. I was like, why am I thinking about going down to Yorkshire when I've got all this on my doorstep? I wasn't even kind of thinking about, you know what I mean? And I'd been interested in it for years, read all the books, watched all the documentaries. I mean, and there's like loads of activity around about here. I mean, if you take it on like a year-to-year kind of basis, there's probably not a lot of activity. But if you take it over a span of 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, there's loads, even more than that. So that's why I kind of, my kind of idea when I like to start the podcast is that I wanted more people to come forward. So I wanted to find out more about the stories and stuff like that. I wanted to find out more about this area and surrounding areas and stuff. And at the same time, I'd interview people with just the things that interested me as well at the same time. So I'd get people to kind of come on and get them on, and I'd also maybe try to source people who's just interested in their stories and stuff. You know what I mean? And you kind of got a invested, you want a bit of knowledge about it, or you've just got an interest in it. You know what I mean? So that's kind of where it's went. I mean, still could be doing me getting more stories coming through, actually kind of real stories, because people, it's still stigmatized.
Yeah.
So people are still reluctant to come forward. But I'll tell you about some kind of things that came once I kind of go through, like some of the kind of instances and things like that I've kind of found when I went through. But I mean, there's so much stuff out there.
Yeah, man, for sure.
It's just not tapped into. You know what I mean? So hopefully now, with the whole this disclosure process, if you can call it that, hopefully with that now, more people will start to see. I don't know, the light, and maybe come a bit more forward, and it's a bit more an open subject to talk about.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Because you do find that so many people, that most of us, I would say most people out there have had some sort of experience with the paranormal. Because you talk to someone that even goes, nah, I don't really believe in anything. Even they've had experiences. And you're like, well, how can you not believe if you've had that experience? I hear that so much. And you must do as well.
I don't believe in UFOs, but this thing happened to me, or I seen this, or
I woke up in a ship.
I didn't believe in that shit. I said, but I seen a Roman soldier walk through my living room once.
Yeah.
That's that. And like, we're talking about that just before we coming on about rationalising stuff, and I'd spoke about this with a couple of people just over the last few days, and it was a story that happened. I'm kind of jumping ahead a bit, but I'll just talk about this now because it's kind of prevalent to what we're talking about rationalisation there. And it was there was like one day where I was this is quite recent, and I hadn't told anybody about this, you know what I mean, until quite recently. I'd never even told my wife, but I'd if you can imagine, I've got an L-shaped kitchen, dining room, living room, and my living room's kind of open plan, but it's got there's kind of like you can imagine a big walkway going through with two small kind of side parts to the walkway. So it's like maybe like a 2 metre or 2.5 metre wide walkway, but there's a wee bit of wall at the back of it. So massive T runs along the wall, and that's just a wee bit at the side there. So I was watching TV, that small bit of walls to my back, and the opening's here. Dining room's there, the kitchen's that way, right round the corner of the wall. So I was, it's probably what happened maybe about, I'd say probably maybe 2.5 years ago. It might have been a wee bit longer than that, a bit less than that, but roughly about that. And I'd forgot to do something. So basically it was either like, oh, the cooker's on, or you need to go and get this. I can't remember what the thing was, but it just came to me, I better do it. And I kind of grabbed the wall and I spun myself out of my chair into just like from the living room into the dining room and into the kitchen, just in one kind of full swoop. And as I done that and stood up, there was something standing in front of me. It was like something like black was standing in front of me, the outline of something. And it blocked the light for the kitchen. It was there. And you're talking like a nanosecond, this thing was there. It was like there. You could see it, and then it disappeared. And to me, like, one half of my brain said, it's a trick of the light or whatever. Like, that was it, right? But the other half, it was funny because like the thing that really struck me is because it was what I thought when I seen it, right? And that's why I went back to it. I remember usually they probably rationalise that as just a trick of the light, but it was I said to myself, I caught you there, right? That's what I said. And,
did you say that out loud?
No, I said it internally.
Okay.
At the same time, I had internally, it was like one half of my brain was saying that was a trick of the light, but the other side was saying I caught you there. And it was like an interesting thing because there was something there. It blocked the light out. It disappeared. You're only talking like a second, less than a second. There was something there. I mean, any scientist or whatever, or somebody would say, it's the trick of the light. You've just kind of jumped up too quick or whatever. But there was something there, outlining something. And it hadn't been the first time where we kind of heard it. I mean, really, this other night, my son had said he kept seeing something in the house, like out the corner of his eye and all that kind of stuff. Couldn't sleep with his light off, anything like that. That all kind of story. Quite a lot of kids and that get that. I mean, I had it as a child. So that I was kind of aware of that, but I never told my wife. And when I told her, I think I told her, and she didn't take much off it. But she goes, one of the strange things was, she goes, I was in my bed, and I was looking. I was in my bed. The door was open. The door, we've got a kind of a wooden hall floor, and she goes, it was like somebody was like doing the toilet on that wooden floor outside the room, right? She was almost like, I almost thought it was like, it sounded like, we used to have cats, well, not got them anymore, but we used to have cats. It was almost sounding like the cat was like doing the toilet. You could hear it like trickling, right, on the floor, like just outside the room. And she got them checked, and there was nothing there. There was no water anywhere. There was no water came from anywhere, but she goes, it was like that. My wife's not into any paranormal stuff. I mean, she just doesn't take nothing to do with it at all. But she goes, there was something. She goes, I heard that noise. It was just literally just outside the room, where it was like somebody pouring something on the wooden floor, and then it was away. But I mean, this house, it's not an old house, and I feel quite grounded here, and it feels like quite a good. It's like spiritualism or anything. I mean, in regards to like energies or anything like that, but I'm saying it feels like it's got a good energy about it.
Yeah.
I'm a wee bit in regards to that. Like I'm into kind of reading about consciousness and things like that. You know what I mean? But it's in regards to it feels like quite a good place, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
And that'll be a good segue into my old place where I stayed as a kid. You know what I mean? So kind of going into the stories for when I was younger, like how when I started the podcast, I was kind of thinking of some of the stories I had when I was younger. So I'll kind of go into them first, and then I can kind of run through some of the stuff I kind of picked up in the podcast as I was going, and then how it's kind of running through there. When I was probably below 5, I used to see somebody. I can't remember this, and it used to totally freak my mum out because it was like I was adamant there was somebody there. My sisters said the same. They all relayed their story to me when I was older, obviously. But I'd say it quite a lot, and I would say it with kind of conviction that somebody was actually in the room with me, or somebody was there if my mum was there as well, I would describe the person. And what I described was like a tall man in a dark suit with a bonnet and dark glasses. A bonnet being a hat, and in Scotland a bonnet's a hat, and that's what I used to say. And my mum always taken it that it may have been like my granddad or something like that, or some kind of thing when I was younger, because he died before I was born and stuff. That's what she kind of maybe thought it was, something like that, whatever. But it used to totally like freak her out. I can't remember anything yet, but I'm not saying it's a hat man or nothing like that, whatever, but just a tall man in a dark suit.
It sounds like the hat man.
It does, it does. I mean, I've not seen the hat man or nothing like that, but I mean, it sounds like that. But I mean, I'd say he had a bonnet on. It was like a man with a dark suit, a tall man with a dark suit, a bonnet on, and dark glasses, or like glasses. And you're talking about dark glasses, no saying it could have been shades, it could have just been like dark glasses or whatever. I can't remember. But these stories got relayed to me as younger. So, as I'm saying, no psychic or nothing like that, but it was just like hearing these stories that used to kind of spook my mum out and my sisters or whatever else. So that was like kind of one of the properties we stayed at when I was younger. And then we moved to a property in the same town, and in that house, it was just a strange feeling in the house. So we had this kind of short discussion. Me, come on, you probably stayed in the house like that as well, as I can imagine. So it was like just a kind of, I don't know if maybe every kid goes through this, like having that way. Like I've talked to my son earlier, he's actually kind of got through it a wee bit now, but you just maybe take it as bona fide that most kids go through this, that they've got some type of fear going on or something, you know what I mean? But at the same time, there was a lot of stuff that kind of happened at this house, probably more than I can remember. I mean, it wasn't until I started doing the podcast I went back and I asked my sisters and what happened here and what happened there, and I got a bit more stories and stuff actually what happened. But I could remember main thing about it was like the cats in the house, with like 2 cats and a dog. They used to see things in the house. They would kind of growl or bark, and the cats would like follow something in the room as if someone was there. So it was like they would be looking, and the 2 of them would be looking in the same place, almost like there was a fly or something like that. There wasn't a fly there, but they were actually looking at the corner of the room, and then maybe get hackles coming up or things like that. And that would happen on occasion, which is quite spooky at the best of times anyway, that happening. So that used to happen. We used to always get, we kind of stayed, we'll kind of explain the houses that I stayed in. So it was a semi-detached ex-council house, and all the houses were in a quite a big oval. So you can imagine, so all the houses are in an oval, all the gardens are in the middle, right? So like the actual back gardens, and they're all kind of cordoned off with fences and hedges and things like that. Our back garden had big high hedge on one side with a fence inside it, and then on the other side it had maybe about a 4 or 5 foot fence, and right at the back of the garden it was just like a fence that kind of got up into trees and stuff like that. So if you were escaping for the back garden, you could escape for the back garden, but it wouldn't be a quick feat. You'd be climbing over something and or clambering through something or something like that. So we used to always get somebody trying the door, the back door. And it was almost like the dog would sense it before it would kind of happen. The dog would or the dog would growl, the dog would he would maybe hear the door handle going first. And the door handle, you could hear it because it was like quite a new door at the time anyway, and it had it was a kind of spring-loaded handle in it as well. So so you can actually hear the spring kind of go when you actually kind of moved it, right? And it wouldn't move itself because it was like, you can remember when back in the day, I know it happens in time to time, but back in the day, the council were redoing all the windows and stuff like that in the houses. So it used to be like maybe old sash windows and that, and they were changing them to like maybe like first time they had double glazing, tilt and turn windows, all that kind of thing. And that was well back in the day, replaced the doors and stuff like that. So it was a pretty new kind of handle back in the day anyway. And this, it was spring loaded, so you had to actually kind of move it. It wouldn't just go with the wind or anything like that. Yeah. So this happened a few times. And we used to think there was a prowler. So my mum used to think there was a prowler because I've got 3 older sisters, so they used to maybe think it was some like creep. It was like maybe in the back garden or something like that. My mum phoned the police a few times because of it. And it got to the point where we'd open the door, the dog would run out, they'd open the door. Right, the dog would catch them. It was just a black lab, but the dog would catch them or whatever. But if there was somebody there, but there was nobody there, there was nobody ever there. We even got to the point sometimes you'd actually see it turning, and you go and grab the door. You got kind of brazen with it because it was like, I mean, at the time I might have only been about 10 or 11, and the door went. I grabbed it and I pulled it open, and there was nobody there. And there was all that kind of going on. So just a kind of, you can imagine as well. My dad at the time was a long distance lorry driver. So he's away during the week, from Monday to Friday. And then I'm in the house with my mother and my three sisters, so and they're all kind of adolescents and stuff like that. So you can imagine it's like, you could probably say that you could wind each other up and fear and all that kind of stuff. But there was definitely stuff going on.
Yeah.
And other kind of stories that happened as well. My sister, when she came back from school one day, she kind of knocked off early from school, came back to the house. The house was empty. She was getting herself a glass of water or something like that at the sink, and somebody grabbed her on the shoulder, and she thought it was my sister, my other sister, and she like giving her a fright or something like that, and she turned round to say like F off or something or whatever, and there was nobody there. Right, it was like a grab on her shoulder, and there was nobody there. Wow. So she totally like got mega fright, went outside, and she sat on the step, and she wouldn't go back in the house. So when my mum turned up she came back from her work, and she turned up, and she asked her kind of what was wrong and whatever else, and she told her, excuse me,
that's so cool, man.
So she kind of told her the story, and my mum said to her, well, she goes, the same's happened to me. She goes, but I've no been wanting to tell anybody because like for fear of, believing me or looking silly. She goes, but the same's happened to me, and there's other stuff happened as well. I don't know if she said she'd been kind of pinched or grabbed or whatever in the house as well. So that kind of happened a few times in the house. Another thing that happened as well, my sister said that she had my mum, if you can imagine, we had a living room downstairs, kitchen next door, and next door to the living room was another bedroom, and my sister was in there. Sister who's like in the kind of middle age to them all. So one sister who's 5 years older, one who's about 7 years older, and another about 10 years older than me. So when she was in the room next door, she heard my mum scream through the living room, and she went through it to see what was wrong. And my mum said that there was basically a black thing came out the floor. Right, so like a black kind of mass that came out the floor and then just disappeared into the adjacent wall, which would have been the neighbour's house. So this thing came up, disappeared. So that was that. I mean, so there was always a kind of ominous feeling in the house all the time. I mean, I had to sleep my light when I was younger and stuff, and I just had that kind of fear when I was younger. I don't know what it was, but it was just in there. Wasn't a good atmosphere in it. So going on for that, there was another one when my sister was when she was in that room, and she was a bit older at this point, and she had one of her boyfriends over staying, and he had woke up, and he said he had this crazy dream, and I'm not relaying this as it happened. It was he said he relayed it as a dream, but it was like prominent enough for him to actually talk about it and relay the story. He said that there's like a slight walk-in wardrobe, which was just it was built into like a recess in the wall. It only maybe went in maybe about 300 or 400 mil deep. You know, I mean, one of the ones which is kind of built into the actual kind of recess. And he said, I woke up. He goes, well, in my dream, I woke up and I could see in that recess there was like this kind of horrible troll-like man. And then he transformed into what he described as like a wizard type thing, and then it disappeared. And he said, and he goes, it was prominent for him enough to actually mention it because I had the weirdest dream and it was in this room. So that was kind of that kind of went on, and then where the kind of the story of the house kind of culminated. I mean, this is the main story I knew of the house. So I'll tell you the main story I knew, then I'll tell you a bit add-on that I found out later on. But the main story I knew was my mum and dad. My sister had moved out at this point. She was away. Probably two sisters who were maybe away at this point, if not the three of them, and maybe just me was in the house. They were kind of the boyfriends or husbands at that point, whatever else, or getting married. So at the time, there was my mum and dad were having a total kind of blowout argument in the living room. This is a story I can remember knowing. I know it 150% happened. I wasn't there to witness it, but my mum, she wouldn't have lied about it like this. She's quite a kind of serious kind of person. She wouldn't have like made anything like this up, especially and relayed it to us. And I mean, but I kind of found it like but after kind of thing, and it was they were having this total blowout argument, and as they were arguing, the living room door burst open, and automatically my dad had turned around and thought it was a dog, and he was kind of going to shout at the dog to get out or whatever else, right? But it wasn't a dog. It was this black thing. It was like a black, like ball stroke mass, whatever it was, right? And the living room door burst open. This thing came in. It went round his legs. It done it fast. It went round his legs, and then it went across to the settee. And the story I heard, this thing went round his legs, and it disappeared behind the settee. And they were trying to find whatever it was, and couldn't find it. And that's the story I heard, and it totally freaked my dad out, because my dad was a bit a skeptic, and I can just remember the kind of comment that came from it. My mum had said that all your dad kept saying was it never had a head. It never had a head. Whatever this thing was, it never had a head. It just basically came in and went round shot on his legs, and then went behind the settee, and they couldn't find it. The two cats were outside. The dog was locked in the kitchen. So it wasn't any animal we had in the house or whatever it was. So that was the story I kind of knew. Not long after that, they kind of did split up and everything, and kind of moved away. But kind of going on for that, I kind of found out a bit more about the story, and I'll kind of get to it as I kind of go through some of the bits where I'll go through the timeline, and then this is more kind of recent, where I kind of tied in with my mum's best friend, who was just going to relay a story. It was like synchronicity, how these things kind of come to you.
Yeah.
And it was one of my second stories, which I'll talk about in a wee minute, when I was going to meet somebody, and she'd approached me about a thing that she'd seen, knowing the same kind of storyline. And then I asked her about that. I was, do you know the story of the black thing? And she says, I know all about it. So I said, I need to hear again the rest of it. So I'll get into that in a minute. But I mean, so that was where things ended in that house. I moved away. My mum and my dad split up, moved away, and then you just kind of get into teenage years and stuff, and that's kind of where you go. I mean, just drinking and stuff like that.
Yeah. The rest is a blur for a little bit.
yeah, that's about it. Aye, totally. So
I can totally relate to because I've got quite a similar. I grew up in a house very similar to that, where you got that bad vibe. We all sort of had experiences. I saw a figure. I saw a ghost in the house. My brother saw stuff as well. So I can totally relate to growing up in a place like that. It sounds very similar to what we had as well.
It's mad because I mean, I used to get to play with my friends and stuff, and it was different days then, and we talk about that all the time as it is now, because we used to just go out and they'll come back until dinner was ready, or you get shouted on or something.
Yeah.
And you were away at all these obscure places, putting yourself in danger and stuff like that, and you would come back to this house where you would just no feel kind of, didn't get me wrong, you feel comfortable in it, but when you're going to bed at night, you were kind of had anxiety about the light getting turned off or whatever else, because you just didn't know what was in the darkness. You know what I mean? And that's kind of what it was, and it's that kind of feeling of the unknown, what is in the darkness and stuff like that. And it was like a bit of lad. I used to play. There was a kind of mossland, right, which is just like trees and peatland and stuff, and then you go further up through that, and then there was like a kind of bank of trees. We used to walk away up to that with my children, and we used to play up there, and you used to get that same feeling there, right? That weird kind of, like, I think kids pick it a bit more than adults, right? But you kind of, it was a good place because it was quite far away, right? But it had this kind of bank of trees, and it had a raised bit of like land. If you can imagine a field coming down, it had a raised bit of land, and it stepped down maybe only about 4 or 5 feet, and then it was another field. And it was good because you can have a good Tarzan swing in it, and you had a good bit to jump off and swing back around. So we used to go and like have Tarzan swings and that. But that place, when I think about that kind of feeling, right, and when it comes up again, I think of that, which I'll relay in one of the kind of stories. When you have that kind of feeling with the kind of fear, if you ever get it when you're older, what I remember is the fear in that house and the fear at that place. I didn't have extreme fear at the place, but it was a weird feeling of just like No saying someone's watching you, but it's almost like if somebody tells you that like the land's tainted by something, for example, there's been a murder there or something like that, it's like kind of picking up in that. It's kind of like picking up in that. It's just like a nice feeling.
Yeah, you can feel that energy of the place.
Totally. I mean, so that place was, I think about that place a lot, just because, not just the house, but that place, and because it was just a kind of weird feeling about it. But it ties in with some other stuff which I hadn't relayed before. You know what I mean, but I was always going to go back up and visit again. But anyway, so moving on, I stayed kind of further away. I kind of moved back. My mum and dad kind of split up and stuff. My dad stayed in the south. I ended up staying with a few friends and stuff like that. Back where I kind of was brought up, and I could always remember when I got sleep paralysis. I used to get sleep paralysis quite a lot, and I had it for probably, I mean, solid for about a year and a half to 2 years. You're talking like every week, every 2 weeks, something like that, or every other week, and sometimes every week. You know what I mean, but it was more often than not, and I used to just put it down to tiredness and stuff. And I was trying to think of different triggers of why it would happen and stuff like that. And there's a couple of things came up. I mean, so there was a town over where I used to stay, and I moved into a room of my friends, one of my friends' houses had a spare room. Moved in there, and it started happening in this place. And it's mad how some of the synchronicities tie into some of the stories and that, which I'll get to. But stayed in that place. And it wasn't until I was kind of thinking about it recently, it was actually one of the first places where I actually start trying and astral travel. I had a book in astral traveling. I was about 18 at the time or something, and I was trying to astral travel. And I only tried it a few times and stuff like that. And then it didn't really kind of get anywhere with it. And kind of that was it. And I can remember the first time sleep paralysis happened, I was sitting on the couch, and I must have dozed off, woke up, could see the TV, couldn't turn my head. It was a kind of classic feeling everybody talks about, where you feel there's a presence in the room. You can potentially move your eyes, but you can't speak. You can't make your vocal cords work. You can almost get your vocal cords to work, but you can't actually scream or shout or anything like that. And I felt there was somebody there. I felt there's a presence there watching me. But that's maybe just down to the theory, not being able to move or anything like that. So I ended up, I got out it, and then that was the first time it happened. The very, very first time it happened. And then it continued to happen though. And I never really seen anything during that. I could sometimes feel like I was getting pushed back down. I don't know if that was maybe just the point where I was probably trying to get myself up, and it felt like that pressure. That's kind of what it felt like. Sometimes you're actually getting pushed back down, and that. But that went on for a good bit of time. I left that property. I moved into another friend's house who stayed the town where I was brought up in, a town called Armadale. Stayed there, and then I was kind of like just renting the room off him, and decorated the room up and stuff like that. I'm a plaster at the trade, so I kind of decorated the room up, did a bit of painting and all that kind of stuff, and tidied the place up. And then I stayed in there for a wee bit, and it happened in there, continued to happen in there as well. And I could remember telling him, and he didn't believe me. I kept telling him, like, I would kind of wake up and I couldn't move, and it was almost like there was somebody in the room with me and things like that. And he's like, just a lot of shite. I mean, just didn't believe me. And so that was that. It continued to happen. I used just to put it down to tiredness, because at that day and age, I was out partying quite a lot. I was into raves and all that kind of stuff. You know what I mean? And I was out most weekends. You could probably easily put it down to tiredness, but I never just did that for 2 years or a year and a half. I did that for quite a long time. You know what I mean? And it only happened for a year and a half. But I used to just put it down to tiredness. That was it. So, but as I was saying though, I didn't just go out drinking and stuff like that for like a year and a half of my life, or going to clubs and whatever else. So I don't know if that was the case, but the interesting thing was, so it happened in the two properties, right? It happened in the two properties. And my mother was moving into Penzance to see one of my sisters who was staying down there, and she had cancer and stuff like that. So she was down there staying, and I was going down to visit her. So we were going to do a bit of backpacking, going to visit her. So the night before I left, I went to see my other sister who stays locally in the town I was in, and because we were getting picked up to go and get the bus or whatever, or the train. And I ended up, I was sleeping on a couch that night, and I woke up during the night, and there was I could see the living room window in front of me, and it had curtains either side. The curtains were ajar, maybe about 40 millimeters, 50 millimeters, whatever. There's just basically a gap in the middle of the curtains, and there was blinds behind that. But because there was like a street light, orange street light, just kind of adjacent for outside the house, you could see the orange tinge with the strip with the curtains weren't covering the blinds. And I kind of woke up with sleep paralysis. I was on the couch, I was lying on my side. I woke up with sleep paralysis, and there was somebody standing there, somebody standing in that gap. And I could make out it was a woman. I could make out with the hair, it was a woman. And I don't know, I always kind of think of this. At some point, I actually tried to shout mum for some reason. I don't know why, but I couldn't get any vocal cords out or anything like that. And I don't know why I tried to shout that. But I knew it was my mum. And but this thing was there. And people always ask me, like, was it a shadow person, or was it like a black entity? I was like, I don't know. It was just dark. Because the room's dark, it's silhouetted because of the light behind whatever it was. It was basically it was just dark and I couldn't see. But it was I could make out it was like it looked like the shape of a woman. I could see the hair. It then came towards me, and it knelt down in front of me next to my face, and then it disappeared. And I came out. And that was one of the ones as well where I sat in that for years. I never told anybody about that. I just rationalised that as like, you just dreamt that.
Wow.
But I was awake. I was literally awake. You know what I mean? I just couldn't move.
Yeah.
But you rationalise these things, and that was me. I kind of put it to the back of my mind. I never even told anybody that until really, really recently. Because you just put it the back of your mind, and you're like, you go, as we're talking about earlier on, you're going through all these different points, and you're thinking, right, that was odd. That was quite odd. I could rationalise that as that. But you can still rationalise it. As like, I might have had a dream. You know what I mean? I might have just woke up out of a dream, but it was a funny one.
Yeah, man.
I woke up on that couch with sleep paralysis, and that thing was there. That was the last time I had sleep paralysis. That
Interesting.
Was it. Never had it after that.
Interesting, man.
I never had it after that. It was only in 2 properties. Then I moved. No, sorry, 2 properties, and I went to my sister's that one night, and then it happened then. Seen that, whatever it was, could have been a dream, right? If you want to kind of play it that way. And then it stopped after that. Interesting thing is though, I went down to Penzance. I stayed down there for about a year and a bit, and I came back up the road, and I spoke to the guy who I used to stay with, and he said to me, he said, remember when you used to say that you had sleep paralysis and all that, and I used to thought it was bullshit. And I said, he says, well, when you left, he said, because you decorated that room up and stuff, and it was quite nice, I moved into that room. He said, it started happening to me. He said,
interesting.
He even said that he felt like this, whatever it was pushing him down. He said that. He said, whatever it was pushing me down.
Wow.
Man.
That's interesting, man. We're going to stay on you, but I'm just going to say, I used to suffer really badly with sleep paralysis. And like yourself, I never used to tell people about it. I used to put it down to me being stressed and tired and stuff like that. But I used to have it weekly, like yourself.
Yeah.
And I had it for a number of years, weekly. And I always the same thing. I couldn't move. I couldn't speak. I felt this horrible fear. And there was an entity in the room that I couldn't see. I couldn't look around the room to see it, but I just knew it was there.
Yeah.
And it was like a horrible entity. And I had that for years in my old flat where I used to live.
Mm-hmm.
And then moving here, I have had it here. I've had it about 4 or 5 times since I've been here, but I've been here nearly 2 years now. So from having it every week to just, and the weird thing is when I have it now as well, it's a different sort of feeling. It's not the same entity that was in that house.
Yeah.
But I still today, I don't know if that's a paranormal thing or if it's something to do within me, but it's very interesting that you say that, man.
It's a funny thing because I just used to take it as everybody gets this.
Yeah.
But they don't. And they don't get it repetitively as well. But that was funny. It used to, I used to get it quite a lot. I mean, as I said, I never seen anything. I used to feel that there was something there, but that's maybe just, you could just put that down to having the theory, not being able to move your body. But at the same time, at the very, very end one, there was that last time it happened that I seen something, whatever it was. I don't think. I mean, for what I seen, I didn't think it was any malice in it or anything like that. I didn't have a really, really bad theory. You know what I mean, it's probably one of the times where I didn't have a theory because I could probably see something. But I mean, it's just the whole point of not being able to move. But it's a funny one how that was the kind of last time it happened and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So that was run about between like 18 to 19, 20-ish, like roughly about that kind of time. I mean, moved into Penzance, down there for about a year, and I came back up the road and met my wife and stuff like that, and kind of moved on a bit. I was just kind of because I went back and I was looking at kind of all this kind of strange, odd things and stuff like that kind of happened, and when I was documenting them down, because when you're interviewing other people, you kind of then it triggers things. You're like, I can remember something like that happened to me, and you actually kind of think about it. And you go back and there's like a few different stories. I mean, one of the ones I can remember, and this stuck in my mind. I can remember the day clearly, and I was at the time I was training for the Royal Marine Reserves, and I was out running and stuff like that. So I was like doing a lot of training and running and things. And I wasn't, didn't get me wrong, I still looked at paranormal books and things like that, but I wasn't actively going out paranormal researching or nothing. I was out for a jog or a run. So I used to run a bit runabout where we stay. There are a few different local towns. If you can imagine, we talked about where it is, because you've got Edinburgh one side, you've got Glasgow on the other, and in between all that, you've got quite a lot of mining towns and maybe some larger towns, but quite a lot of small kind of mining towns and stuff like that. So the town of Armadale is where I was from originally. Then you've got a town, Bathgate, which is next to it. And so we stayed in Bathgate at this point. And I used to run around the Bathgate Hills, just like hills that I think they probably will go maybe up about like 1,500 feet or something like that, maybe 2,000, maybe not as much as that. But they're not massively high, but they're prominent hills in the area. So the road that kind of goes round the hills, it's maybe a loop. If you stay in the road, the main kind of road, it's maybe a loop about 5 or 6 miles. So I used to go out and run that. There's some country parks, I used to go and run them. And then one day when I was running the Bathgate Hills, I noticed there was a wee forest into the right-hand side, which I'd never run in before. And I seen some signage for it as well, and I kind of thought, I'm not running there. I can see some trails when I'm running past. I kind of thought, next time I come up, I'm going to go in there and just kind of suss that place out. And so it was either a couple of days later or a week later. I can't remember the date kind of thing, but I can remember kind of roughly when it happened. So at the time, I must have only maybe been about, I reckon I was probably about 23, 24, something like that, around about that kind of age. During the day, and this was like out for a run. And if you can imagine this area, so you can imagine it's like you're up the Bathgate Hills. This bit was kind of like flat land with some kind of smaller trees, and kind of grasslands and stuff like that. And then you went up a kind of steep hill and went into kind of like fir trees, quite dense fir trees. Not a big wood. You're maybe the whole wood's probably maybe about 1 mile or 2 miles square or something like that. It's no massive. And there was like different trails and stuff like that. So I ran through the kind of flat part, got up the kind of steep part, got to the kind of dense woodland, and I just stopped in my tracks. And I was just like, it was like almost like it wasn't a voice in my head, but it was almost like, don't go any further. Right? It was like the strangest feeling. It was like it was fear, right? It was like a theory, something came over me. And the only way I can describe it, and I've described it before sharing this, is like it's like going back to that place when you're a kid and you've got an unknown theory, something. So as I relayed earlier on about when you're basically in your room at night and you've got a theory, whatever's there, or at that place I talked about, you've got a theory that place and you can feel something. But it was like something was just like, it was just like for me, don't go any further. So I didn't go into the dense, and I'm not scared of stuff. You know what I mean? I'm not usually like that. I mean, I totally know. And it was funny because it was during the day, I was out for a run and I got to the top of that bit of hill, coming into the more dense bit of forest, and I just kind of thought, didn't go in there. So I cut my run short And I went home and I told my wife, I was like, I had the oddest feeling. I can remember relaying it to her, and I told her about the kind of story, and I had the oddest feeling up there, out for a run. I just had this kind of intense kind of fear at this one bit. It just felt totally odd. Totally odd. And that was it. Never ran in there again, right? Until more recently. So I never went back in there. So out train running, all that kind of stuff, and then forgot about that place. So that was kind of a thing that happened to me. We'll come back to that later on in the story. So I had that kind of feeling. I'm just documenting some of the kind of strange points, and then another kind of thing happened. So that was when we stayed in Bathgate. We moved back to Armadale, had a house there, and at the time I must have only been age-wise, I reckon I probably would have been about late 20s, early 30s. And out running again, I run and stuff like that, so I'm not doing as much now, but at the time I used to do quite a lot of running. I was into like triathlon stuff and things like that, so about running at like stupid times. Because at the time, you try to kind of get it around work and all that kind of stuff, so about in the morning running and out at nights at running. And just when you kind of get right into running, you need to do it, regardless of when it is. So it's like if you didn't do it, you beat yourself up about not doing it. You just get in that kind of mindset where you need to actually do it. I wish I could be there now, but I'm not. So I can't get consistent. I go and run like once, and it's like takes me 2 weeks again. I'll go back it again. So I can't get that kind of mindset again. But I used to go out and run, and I wouldn't mind. I'd be out running at night and all that kind of stuff. And I forgot about that kind of story I just relayed. And there used to be it's still there, in fact, right? I stayed right up the back of Armadale, and it's got like a psychopath. That it used to be an old railway line. It is a railway line now, but it used to be an old railway line, and they made a psychopath. So it ran basically Edinburgh, Glasgow, right? So you can go all the way the psychopath, and you can walk it and stuff like that. So they ended up reinstated the train line as well. So you've got the train line and you've got a psychopath next to most of it, or like it kind of cuts off and veers through different bits and goes into towns and stuff like that, and then goes back again. So this was at the back of the town. So you can imagine you've got Armadale, and then you've got the town of Bathgate next to it. There's probably about a three-mile gap in between the two, right? This is right at the back of the town. So if you're up in this, you've got the town to your left-hand side, and then it's just like farmland for about another like 3 or 4 miles or something, trees and things like that, right? So I'm out running. I used to run it all the time. I used to just kind of go out running at night and stuff like that. And I ran down the psychopath, and I relay this. I'm just trying to remember, but I either had like a crap LED light, like one of the ones that used to just have the old diodes in it, and it wasn't like the ones you get now. It beamed just a light in front of you, so you could just see you weren't going to stand in the enemy skewer, right? But it wasn't a great light. So it was either running without a light, or with a light, or like that one, or without a light totally, because you're not going to get ran down in this kind of track of psychopath. But if I had a light on, it was just that small LED. Doesn't beam a light or nothing like that. It just basically casts a small light in front of you. Still got it. I mean, it's crap. So I was out running, and when you run along the psychopath, you've got the houses on your left hand side, and you can see the streetlights maybe about 100 or so meters away, and then they eventually fizzle out, and it's just farmland. And then you're running at this, it's pitch black, and then you can, until you hit the next town, which is about 3 miles away. So I leave you can see the houses behind, you see the streetlights, roughly just the orange tinge to the streetlights, we're running past them, you're on this. It wasn't pitch black, it was, although if I had the light, it wasn't a great light, but it was light enough where you could still see things, right? So you could still see, like if you turn around and look at a field, you could see that outline of maybe like a darker bush or a fence post and things like that. So I was running, and once you leave the kind of the house bit, there's like a big kind of open field in the left hand side, and there's like a red dot that kind of caught my eye in the field, and like an LED, right? A red LED. This would have probably been, trying to think of the date. It'd have probably been when about, I reckon it was about 2010 or 2009, roughly. I could go probably, I even went back to check actually exactly when it was. I'm sure I did before, but anyway, out running, seen this red LED, and the first thing I thought of, I was like, I hope that gate's shut down the bottom. I thought it was a dog with an LED in its collar, right? You didn't even get a lot of them back then, but you did get them, right? And I kind of thought, but it was strange because like that field, you never usually see anybody with dogs in that end like that because it's like a cattle field. There's usually like cows in it and stuff like that, and sheep. But you know yourself, like the farmers they'll have them in there at some point and they'll move them to another pasture, then kind of take it back again, stuff like that. So I seen this light, and as soon as I kind of seen it, it was coming. It started moving towards me, right? It was kind of. I'd say it was probably maybe. It was about the height of a dog off the ground, about 3 to 4 feet off the ground, right? So it was coming towards me. It was a good bit away though. It was maybe 400 or 500 meters away. It was a good bit away, right in the middle of this field. And as soon as I seen it, I was running, and I seen it. It was making a beeline for me, right. And I kind of thought to myself, the first thing I thought it was like, shit. If that's a dog, I hope the gate's shut at the bottom because there's a big gate at the bottom. So I'm still running this thing. So the whole distance for where it happened, it went for, if I can remember correctly, it probably went for, it was like slightly less than a kilometre, right? So I'm running, this thing's coming towards me, and if you can imagine, the track I'm running on is slightly elevated for the field, right? It's maybe about 6 foot, because it used to be like part of the old trailing line or something like that, right? So it's slightly elevated. And then you've got a wee slight embankment, you've got a kind of wire fence, just like a normal kind of normal fence. It's maybe only about 4 foot high. Over that, there was like some gorse bushes. You know, like, can you get the gorse bushes? They're maybe only about 2 or 3 foot high. The jaggies in them and stuff like that. So they were sporadically just next to the fence. Or if you can imagine, you've got like a whole field, right? Before you hit the field, you've got the fence, you've got the embankment, you've got the fence. You've maybe got about 5 meters width of gorse bushes sporadically placed just at the start of the field. Then you've got the field. So this red light was coming straight towards me, thinking it's a dog. I'm kind of like, I don't know if it's got, I'm keeping an eye on it. But at the same time, I'm straining to hear somebody shouting on the back, because obviously it's ran a good distance to meet where I am, right? And nobody's shouting on it. So it's still kind of coming. It's running along. So I'm running straight. The fence is parallel with me. It's running on the other side of the fence. So at this point, it's only about 10 meters away from me, right? And it's going through the gorse bushes. So it's going one side of the gorse bushes, other side of the gorse bushes, keeping in line, kind of just tracking me all the way down, right? And I'm still thinking, shit, this dog's going to get me, right? So I end up, I get to the bottom bit where the gate was. The gate's locked, right? And it's shut off. Just a big kind of farm gate, that's shut. And I seen the light, and at the last, like, I looked at the gate. I was kind of running towards the gate. I looked at the gate. I could see the thing coming, a few gorse bushes, and then I stopped. And I was like, there was like a overpass where a kind of road runs over. And I got to the overpass and I kind of stopped, and I was listening for anybody shouting the dog, because it'd been running, it probably ran for the better part of a kilometre, if not slightly less than that. I reckon I measured that on the Google Maps, and I reckon it was maybe it must have ran for like, between from where it came from, but the distance where I was running, it was maybe about 800 metres or something like that, right? And I looked around, I couldn't see it anymore. It disappeared. The thing disappeared. Eerily quiet. Couldn't hear nobody. Couldn't hear the dog, or if it was a dog. Couldn't hear nobody shouting on it. And I looked, and there was nothing there. I couldn't see this thing. This thing had been weaving in and out the gorse bushes and stuff like that, right? Only about like 5 to 10 metres for me. And then when it got to the last kind of like 10 metres to the gate, I could see it, still running. And I turned round and it's no there, right? I thought it just maybe went behind some gorse bushes. But I'm looking and I couldn't see nothing, and I couldn't hear nothing. And you kind of thought, if there's somebody's over there with a dog, they'd be shouting on it, at least. Or it would disappear for like that amount of time. I say that amount of time, it would probably been like somewhere in the region of maybe like 4 minutes, right? 5 minutes. And when I just got this kind of weird feeling, I kind of thought, I was thinking like, I just presumed it was a dog, right? I could see fence posts, I could see gorse bushes, I couldn't see a dog. I never seen a dog. I just seen the red light. That's all I seen, and I ended up, what I done is, I just had this kind of like weird feeling there, and I ran to the next town, And I went to the streets, I ran back all the streets where the street lights were. And then the thing I could remember about it, right? And I'll tell you how it actually came back in my memory again. And it wasn't to do with the podcast, it was something else. And I was, what I did do is, the first thing I done is, I bought a light that beamed the light because of that. I never ran there at night again, right? Because it was in my head. And I went and bought a light that actually beamed a prominent light that I could shine and see, because I thought, if that happens again, I'll be able to actually see what it was. But it was dark enough where you could see like the outline of a fence post and the outline of like a darker gorse bush to maybe the field in the background and stuff like that. I can't remember if it was moonlight or not, but you could make things out.
Yeah.
I never seen a dog. All I seen was that light. Which you could easily argue the point saying it was probably a dog or whatever, but I mean, I couldn't have minded seeing a dog. But the thing was, it was I forgot all about it, and that was like years and years and years ago, and I totally forgot all about it. And I told the wife about it. I came back in that night and I told the wife and stuff like that. But I actually even forgot I told her. Right, Skinwalker Ranch was on. It was like the first season or something like that, and it was either the first season of Skinwalker Ranch, and it was either Jeremy Corbell's film. It was one of the two, and there was a bit in the film, and they were talking. You know the stories where they talk about there's been orb seen and things like that, and multiple different types of flying things and all that. But one of the stories which perked my interest, when they were saying there was one other thing they'd seen. It was like a small red orb, like the size of a red LED, in amongst the cattle. They've seen that in amongst the cattle, this thing, and I kind of thought, and it came on, and the other place I've seen it as well, it was in one of Paul Sinclair's book. I never read that till slightly after. I used to listen to all his stuff on YouTube and stuff like that, but I hadn't read his books yet. But the Skinwalker Ranch thing, I thought, I've seen that. That's the same kind of thing I've seen. This small red light, the way it was moving about, where it was hugging the ground, all that kind of stuff. And I said to my wife, I was like, did I ever tell you about a time where I was out running and I seen this red light and all that? And I told her the story. She's like, tell me about it. She goes, you wouldn't stop talking about it for about 3 months. But it's funny how I just totally forgot.
Yeah, man.
I'm not saying nothing. It's just because I probably was thinking of it, but I just totally forgot about the whole story.
Yeah.
It wasn't until I seen that thing and it triggered that kind of story. It came back again. I was like, I've seen something like that, but you could easily rationalise that and say that was a dog with an LED collar or whatever else. But
yeah, but as you said, you would hear an owner, or you would see it if it was coming. If it carried on its path coming towards you, you would have seen it or heard it at least. You know.
Totally. I mean, but if you went down the route with Occam's razor, what it could potentially be, you'd probably say it was a dog. But I can't mind seeing a dog. I could see everything else.
Yeah.
I couldn't see that. And it was just funny. I mean, it affected me that much that I ran the other direction.
Yeah.
But the same, I was going that direction anyway. I was going to do an out and back, right? And I ran further into the next town, and then ran back on the streetlights.
Yeah, I don't blame you, man.
Because I got a fright with it. And then after that, I went and bought a light that I could shine and beam a light. And I've always got them now for running and stuff like that. If I actually go and do running.
When you saw that the red light coming towards you, could you see like the shape of a body around that, or was it literally just the red light?
It was like, it wasn't. I mean, you're talking, when I say a red light, this is literally the size of an LED. This is just a red LED light. That's all. And that's how instinctively I kind of thought it was a dog, because it was nothing big. It wasn't lighting up a big area or nothing like that. It just looked like a small, if you've got a small LED, a red one, and you had it in the middle of a field, that's what you would see. It was like that. And then but when I seen it, it was like automatically, it was stationary in the field when I seen it, when I was running. And it was just, it didn't come straight for me. It was going to intercept me when I was running. So it was coming towards me. So I'm kind of thinking, right, I'm straining to listen. Because if you're out running, I mean, you didn't want a dog chasing you.
No, man. Yeah, for sure.
So, but the interesting thing as well is where I was reading, I'd only heard that story once before, in the Skinwalker Ranch thing, when they're talking about a small, not an orb, it was like a small LED sized light in amongst the cattle would be seen now and again. And Paul Sinclair got a story of somebody, and they had the same thing, and they thought it was like they seen this thing where, I'll probably not do the story justice, but they'd seen like a light I think they'd actually parked their car or went for a walk or something at night. I can't remember the story. And it was middle of nowhere, down in Yorkshire, and they seen a light. And I think that it was like a red light, and they thought it was like a parked motorbike because it was only one single kind of small red light. I think they thought it was a parked motorbike. And it kind of darted about, and it was like hugging the ground. And they seen it actually, it ended up, it was just, all it was this red light. And it was like kind of following them or whatever else, and they got a fright and they ended up they kind of bugged off in their car. I've not done the story justice, there's probably a lot more to it than that, but it was somebody else witnessed the same thing, and they were prominent enough to actually say, this wasn't a motorbike, it wasn't a bike, it wasn't an LED, it wasn't a dog, it was like just a light, it was just a small kind of light that was like about 2 to 3 feet above the ground. It was hugging the ground and kind of moving, and just weird.
Interesting, man.
Funny story. I mean, that was it. I mean, so that was just going through some of the kind of stories. There was another one as well. We were out camping. This probably actually happened before that. It was probably when I was about 19. And it's not a great UFO story, but it was a type of kind of UFO story. We're out camping at a place called the Lily Loch, if I can say it right. And then camping and fishing and stuff like that. And we're kind of looking at the stars and stuff like that. And we seen like a satellite, just like you'd see a normal kind of satellite traveling through the sky. And it was coming through the sky, and it was about to like just kind of cross over another distant star. And we jokingly said, I wonder what it's going to do when it hits that star, because it was going towards this kind of brighter star, right? And you've seen it in the sky coming up. And we're watching it, and when it got to that star, it done a total L shape. It literally done like a right angle turn on that star. And then
Interesting.
And then just went the other way. You know what I mean? Absolutely mad, because like satellites can't do that. They didn't.
No.
I mean, they're not going to just. It was on a dime. See that cliche saying it turned on a dime? It did. It was literally like, this is coming towards the star. And we were jokingly, I wonder what it's going to do. And it was almost like it just could read their thoughts. I mean, it went 90 degrees and just went that other direction.
Interesting, man.
Absolutely mad. You know what I mean? But
yeah,
that was some of the stories that I kind of just kind of had when I was younger. You know what I mean? And some of them I remembered, some of them I didn't remember, and some of them kind of came back to me in regards to, or some of them I hadn't relayed before. And then so I had some of the experiences in the back burner, and it's like you kind of some of them you dismiss, some of them you rationalise, some of them you just rationalise, forget about. Some of them you rationalise, but you know there's something to it.
Yeah.
But you didn't want to seem like a crazy person, so you didn't talk about them.
Yeah.
And that's it. Or you talk about you talk about with some people because you know that maybe they're into the same stuff and whatever else. But it's like anything else. You'll maybe talk to like your close friends about things and stuff like that. Like for me, for example, not everybody's into the subject, so like I'll talk to people I know who's into it. I'll not start preaching it to people at work or anything like that, because they're maybe not ready for some of the stuff I'd probably say.
It's interesting though, man, because I've had quite my Siri's come up. Keeps doing that. Let's get that away. No, Siri. Sorry, man.
Sorry.
You say, because you put these experiences to the back of your mind. When I was 14, me and my brother and a few of our friends, we saw what looked like a floating building in the sky. We all saw this. Well, I can't remember the friends that were with us, but me and my brother certainly remember this and still talk about it now. But it's a memory that it sort of happened. It's quite a big thing, really, to see a floating building. But we didn't. It was quite far in the distance. But that's what it looked like, a floating sort of building-shaped thing. We don't know what it was. But we had this experience when we were younger. And it wasn't until I was on another podcast and I was talking about my experiences. I was on Paranormal Heart with Cat Wald. And that memory just came back to me there and then. And I just said it because it happened. And my brother listened to the show and he rang me up when it aired and was like, "Bruv, I remember that. What was that?" And we talk about it now because we still don't know what it was. Mm-hmm. But it should be something that I remember all the time. But totally. It got pushed to the back of my memory. And even now, sometimes I forget about it and I'm like, "Oh, I saw that." It's really weird. It's weird how that happens.
It's mad how sometimes you do remember, sometimes you don't. And then, like, I was even, when I put one of the podcasts before about some of the stuff in the house, and I had a friend who used to come to the house, and he said, he goes, I could remember being in there and we seen a black thing at the side. It was like a cabinet in the living room. It was a black thing that's something shot away from the side of the cabinet and the door opened. And I couldn't remember that. But he can. He's like, I can remember the two of us were sitting there and we seen this thing. I can remember it, and I can't remember it. But it's trying to remember the whole of your childhood's quite bloody hard. You know what I mean? But same time, some of these things should stick in your mind. But like some of the interesting ones was, so when I kind of started the podcast, and I was kind of delving into some of the local stuff again, and some of the stuff's been researched in the past. Some of it's no. Some of it's not had like the kind of good airtime it should have, and but there's like interesting stories out there. I mean, so I kind of I'll jump to one first, but it was probably the second story I went. So there was one where the town I stayed in, and this links into it. Actually, it's funny how the kind of, you call it synchronicity, but how it kind of comes back round again to me, right? And it's like so. This is probably the third story I got, and I'll relate though because it links into some of my house stuff back in the past. So there's a guy called Andrew Swan who was from the same town as me, and he stayed round the corner for us, and he went to school with some of my sisters and stuff like that. And I knew him. He used to stay next door to one of my friends as well in the corner, so he was always thinking about the cars and stuff like that, and doing stuff like that. So I could remember him, and we used to kind of chat to him now and again and stuff. No friends or nothing like that, but I knew him. I knew who he was. So I knew he had a story back in an encounter back in '94, quite a prominent encounter, and it was in the papers and all that back in the day and stuff like that. But I think it's been in like one book or like maybe two books or whatever, right? But just a small bit about it. I mean, it's like there's no a good keen bit. And I think it did get investigated today, and it was on like Strange But True and things like that.
Oh wow! I remember that show.
Never even watched it. He said he's never even watched it. Right? I mean, this encounter. I mean, this. If I could go to all the encounters, this one intrigues me the most. You know what I mean? Because it's literally where I stayed. It was my hunting ground when I was younger, when I was out playing and stuff like that. Right? So so this guy it was 94 on August 1994. He was, I can't remember exactly where he was. I don't know if he was at some car racing or whatever he was doing. He was coming back for something, and it was later on at night. Still light because it's August, and it's like summer in Scotland, so it's still quite kind of light at night and stuff. And it was a lightning storm happening as well. So it was starting to it was being hot during the day, and it was starting to kind of get a bit like thunderous and stuff. So he was up watching a lightning storm. So there's a high school on the outskirts of the town, and there's playing fields at the back. And the playing fields at the back, after the playing fields, it's that land I spoke about, the moss land with the trees and all that kind of stuff, and the farms and all that. And way further on for that is the place where we used to play the Tarzan swings and all that kind of stuff. And I used to go up there when I was younger all the time and make bases and dig traps and all that kind of stuff. And so he's up there watching on the playing fields, watching this lightning storm kind of take place, and he said he sees something in the sky, and I think he said he seen like a rectangular thing in the sky coming towards where he was, and he said it was that coming in that much. He said he thought it was going to land in the actual playing field. He said, but it must have been kind of bigger than he thought, and he couldn't get a right kind of view of it or whatever else, or it wasn't coming any further. So he thought, I'm going to get a better look at this thing. So where he was looking out, he was looking south, right? And all it is basically there's like farmland, mossland, some trees, and there's a next town called Whitburn, which is probably about 4 or 5 miles away further up. But in between the two towns, there's a road called the North Rig Road, right? The North Rig Road it's called, and it's a one-track farm road that just runs between the back of the town to the back of another town. So what he does is he drives west to a town called Blackridge, right? And then his plan was to come up on that back road to try and get a better view at this object, because he could see it, But then it's not coming any further, so I'm going to go and find out what that is. So he drives out to the next town, drives up, and then comes back on himself, but further out. He's maybe about a mile and a half away, 2 mile away at this point. They're driving in a single track road. So he's looking in the skies, doesn't see nothing, can't find it, doesn't see it. So he keeps driving. And he gets to this point in the road, and this thing just comes over a bank of trees. He said, so it's a black triangular object. It's literally like 15. He actually said he thought it was going to hit the roof of his car, right? He said it was about 15 foot above the ground, but it was like literally, it came over this small bank of trees as he drove up, right? And then it literally stopped, hovered in the field, right? Hovered in the field roughly about 100 feet from him, right? In this field. He's parked up, he's there. He said it looked like, it was still light. I said I could still see it, right? It wasn't dark, it was getting darker than that, but he said he could still see it. He said, the way he could describe it, when I heard the story back in the day and stuff like that, I heard it was like a pyramid type shape, right? On its axis or something like that. And that was the story I kind of heard him and relayed and stuff. So, so I'd met him, I got a hold of him and he agreed to meet me and stuff like that. And I went up and he took me to the spot where it happened and stuff. So this is a story he was kind of relaying. So he got to that bit, this craft came over the top of his car. It then went into the adjacent field and just hovered in the field about 15 foot above the ground, right? And he said, if you can imagine, imagine a Toblerone. See a Toblerone in the sweet. If you've got a Toblerone and you've got the point pointing down the way, so you've got the flat bit on the back and you've got the point pointing down, he said, if you can imagine that, with the back splayed, right, wider, and then but the front came down to a point, he said that's what it looked like. It was matte black, just black. He said this thing's about 40 foot long, right? It's about 20 foot at the back, right? It's about 15 foot kind of high, and it's about 15 foot off the ground, right? So you're probably looking about the size of an average aircraft type thing, right? If not a wee bit bigger. And he said it was like matte black, kind of black with just rounded edges on it as well. And it just hovered there, right? And it was a long sighting, right? This thing just was there. So it was starting to get a bit darker. He plugged in his, he had a halogen light and he plugged in his cigarette lighter and he shone it on it, right? He shone it on the object. And as soon as he did that, his light blew, right? So his light blew and he got a fright, jumped back in his car, tried to start his car, and his car wouldn't start, right? So at this point, he's totally cacking it. Phones the police. Police get him, explains where he is, what's happened, or there and that kind of stuff. So they're on their way. He's still there, and then he's still waiting for the police. The police will take a bit of time. He can see them on the adjacent road that he was on earlier on. So he phones again. He says, "Look, I can see it's no that road. It's kind of further up." So eventually they come up on the road, and as they're on the end of the road, you can see the lights coming along the road. Right, it's getting a wee bit dark at this point, but you can still see it. This thing just backs out the same way it comes in, right, and then shoots off, right. And see, this thing's like quite big. He says it's just in the field. He goes, literally, it's like 100 meters or 100 feet for us in the field, right, just hovering 15 foot above the ground. So. And he said, the thing is, he goes, when the police came along that road, he goes, they must have seen it. He said, because like it was backing out as they were coming along the road. So the police got there, they turned up, there was like 3 police, there was like 2 police cars and a van or something like that turned up, right? And he said the funny thing was they took him into a car or whatever and they were talking to him. And they said the guy who was interviewing him had slippers on. Right, he goes, it must have been like a superintendent or something like that. And it must have pulled him out his bed, right, or out his house to come to this, because they must have phoned saying, well, I've got this story or whatever. Do you want to come? So they're all there and they're talking to him, and I don't even think they breathalyze him. I think they believe him, right? They believe he's like lucid, he's rational, or whatever else. And so he tells him the story and stuff like that, and they tend to kind of believe him, whatever. And they phoned the RAC or the AA to come and pick his car up because his car won't start. And he said the funny thing was, he goes, when I was telling him the story in the car, one of the police officers jumped the fence and put a traffic cone in the field where this thing was sitting. He goes, I never told them where it was. He goes, they must have seen it.
Interesting.
So they must have. So he then he then gets his he gets a lift home of the police, and they come and pick his car up and stuff like that, and he gets up, and then he ends up back at his house. It wasn't too far from there, back at his house, and he's gone back out. His window, he's got an electric windows, and his window was down. So he was going back out to put like a this is like middle of the night type thing, right? Or early hours in the morning. He's like, I better put like a bit of polythene in a bag or something like that over the window and tape it shut just in case it rains. So he was out doing that, and he heard his car chip. Mind back in the day, you had the old alarms and that, and they kind of chipped and stuff like that. So he heard that kind of chirping. So he went out and he started his car, and his car started again. His car started. It was totally dead. I mean, totally dead. And so that being that, then a bit of the press got a hold of the story. It was in the papers and all that kind of stuff. He said the funny thing was, my mum and dad were on holiday at the time, and he said they actually seen the story before I told them. It was in the papers, and they got the local kind of paper when they were abroad in Spain, and they got the story and him and all that kind of stuff and this UFO and everything, and they got ridiculed for the story and all that kind of stuff and whatever. But I mean, as people do with the stigma and everything, but he was adamant with what happened.
Yeah,
and the police kind of believed him in that as well, and it got a bit of investigation on the day. And one of the things they found, he's still going to look it out for me, if he can. He said, well, there was one of the investigators had done went and got the police transcripts, right, and he double checked the timelines and all that kind of stuff, and it transpires that he lost an hour and a half because
the missing time as well.
Yeah, because the time he went up there, he said it was up there. It was still light. It must have been around about this time. It was around about like 10:30 or whatever it was. And then he went up round, and he goes, I must have only been round there, but I seen this craft for about 20 minutes or half an hour. And when he made the call to the police, it was like something like 2:30 or something like that, or whenever it was. But he said they worked it out. He lost about an hour and a half.
Wow.
So that was that kind of story. And he said to me he was reluctant to get regression done because 2 years prior there was another story which I'll talk about in a wee minute. But one of the guys, the main kind of guy that happened in that story, he kind of I'll tell you about the story now. So 2 years prior, you're only maybe talking about 15 miles away. There was two guys travelling back in their car back to Edinburgh from a place called Tarbrax, I think it was. And if you're in Edinburgh, you see the hills in Edinburgh, like the back end, no Arthur Street, but there's like prominent hills called the Pentland Hills. There's a road that runs parallel with them. They were coming back one night, seen a UFO on the road. As far as I can remember the story, I don't do it justice, but they had seen like a kind of a UFO on the road, shimmering light. This is the middle of nowhere. Drove through it, got home, and kind of obviously I think they were like shocked about the scene, that kind of stuff. But they lost like 2 hours of time. So one of the guys got regressed, and it was like a full blown. This is 92, remember, full blown abduction scenario. Another guy didn't want to find out any more about it or whatever else. But the guy who got regressed advised Andy not to get regressed. Because
man,
that other guy lost his job and all that kind of stuff, and basically it happened kind of hard as far as I could like remember all that story. You know what I mean? But
do you know what sort of things he experienced?
It was like a full blown abduction scenario in regards to aliens, greys, whatever it was. Basically, experimental kind of procedures and stuff like that, whatever it was. As far as I can remember the story. I mean, there's Malcolm Robinson in a book in it. It's called the A70 Encounter, right? So that was 2 years prior. So that guy obviously got wind of the story, and there was like UFO groups and stuff like that, and he advised them not to get regressed because he kind of thought it probably ruined his life or whatever else. So Andy didn't want to go back there and find out if there was any. He said, but the thing was, I never heard this bit of the story before, right? But he said to me, when I went to bed that night and I slept, he hadn't told anybody this, but when I went to bed that night I slept, because I dreamt that I went in the craft. He said, I dreamt across the field and I went inside the craft. There was nobody in the craft. It was like, I remember seeing like lights and stuff like that inside it. I went in the back of it. He said, but I can't remember seeing anybody in like that, but I can remember being in it. He said, but I still didn't want to get regressed and all that kind of stuff, just for the advice he had off this one guy. And but he says he stays up there now, right? And next to a farm, up that kind of road and up next to that place, which is right next to the same place where I had to go when I was younger with the Tarzan swing place, that kind of weird feeling place, right? Same place, right? No saying there's any linkage there, just it is the same place. And he says, still seen things recently. So he showed me, he sent me a video somebody seen. He said it was like a white sphere in the sky, and it had like lights going on about it. And we stay in a flight path, so we know what planes look like. They say there, so video on his iPhone or whatever and sent me it, but it's hard to see. It's just a light in the sky. Anybody would just say it's light in the sky, but they'd see in the video, you just see this massive kind of bright light going across, and you can just see a bit of kind of flickering the lights with it and stuff like that. But you can tell with the video that people are looking at it. So he said he's seen that, and he's seen other stuff as well. He said he's seen I'm sure he's seen like a blue orb or something like that. He's up in that vicinity. So I relayed that. That was a kind of story for, and that story intrigues me the most because it's from my own old town where I stayed. Used to play up that neck of the woods, and kind of that was it for there. You know what I mean? So that does intrigue me about that whole kind of area, and that sighting he's seen, especially with that. There was an also thing. I'm sure they went through the whole thing where they went to the MOD and all that, and I'm sure they even said that there was a thing where he got a letter from the MOD saying, "Oh, there was they'd never seen anything in the area, whatever else, on any radar or whatever else, but they did have a few fighter jets in that area that night or something like that." So he was going to dig. He's going to dig that letter out. He's got a letter somewhere about that. Man. He's got that.
It's interesting that amount of police turned up as well.
Oh, totally. Aye, I mean, back in the day, the police up here it's Police Scotland now, right? But back in the day, it was you had West Lothian Police and you had Strathclyde Police. And we were kind of on the border between the two. So when they came, it was Strathclyde Police that came. So when they got the call, they must have basically like phoned the sergeant or the superintendent, said like, "Come to this," and they all kind of came because it was like whatever it was.
Yeah.
Interesting thing for that, isn't it? Oh, it's only happened in the last like 2 weeks. And I'll relay this, and I'm only relayed it in a podcast on night there. And it's not a brilliant story, but I mean, it's somebody sent me a video and they'd said we'd seen this. I'm sure they said it was maybe December. And a lot of people don't know exactly where the Andy Swan encounter took place. They know that it was between Blackrig and Armadale, whatever else, and in that kind of town area, right? So somebody sent me a video, said that we've seen this thing. It was just hovering in the sky. It was basically just a bright kind of white ball in the sky, like a bright white light. You can actually see a plane passing in the distance behind it, so you can see what the planes look like. But this thing's just a lot brighter. It's no far above the horizon line. Well, I say the horizon line, they can only actually see maybe a few miles in a bank of trees, and they see this thing above the trees. They say it sits stationary for. They said it sat stationary for like a few minutes, and eventually, kind of after 10 minutes, it disappeared. Could be nothing, right? Could be anything. But unbeknown to them, I went and I looked because I seen the video. I knew exactly what it was. I went and Google mapped it. I went and street viewed it, and I got the exact line of sight for it, and I triangulated it right across, and it cuts right through the same path as that encounter back in '94.
Interesting.
Maybe just a coincidence, obviously, right? But it's the exact same place.
But as we were saying before, that there is areas that, for whatever reason, seem to have more activity. There seems to be more high strangeness going on there.
Totally. Totally. I mean, that was the exact same place.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I'll get the video. I could send you the video and let you see it.
Cheers, man.
But it's a bit of swearing during it and stuff like that. But it's no long. It doesn't last long. You know what I mean? And like, if you look at it, you'll just probably say it's just a light in the sky. But for me, a lot of people know exactly where that encounter took place before. Until I got him to actually take me to where it was and show me it. Because I actually thought it was somewhere else until he showed me that. And I also thought it was like an upside down pyramid, but it wasn't. It was like a upside down Toblerone. He said the best he said the best description I had for it is like it had this remote control, a TV remote control, which was splayed at the back and it went down to a thing. He goes, it looks like that, apart from it had a point on the front of it. And I've still got the picture they sent me for it. But he sent me the video of that other thing he's seen. So that was the kind of mixture of kind of stories. He's seen a few things more recently as well in regards to lights in the sky in the same area. He's not a daft guy. You know what I mean? As a case, he's not into UFOs or anything like that. You know what I mean? He's just basically, obviously, he had that encounter and stuff like that, but he doesn't follow it all and stuff.
Yeah.
So that thing happened. After that, then somebody contacted me, right, and said seen lights in the sky. Basically, told me the story. They were doing their dishes at night, and they were looking out. It was quite late at night. Excuse me, quite late at night. They're looking out. They seen like they said it looked like, if I can remember correctly, it looked like a kind of orange sphere, and it was flying erratically. Right? They heard that story and they were telling me about the story, but they didn't know. I didn't recount exactly where it happened in the story, right? And they were telling me they seen this thing, and she got her husband to come and see it, and this thing was kind of flying erratically, as in like kind of right angles and stuff like that. It was like up in the vicinity. This is Armadale as well, right? The site in same town, right?
Okay.
Same town, right? Unbeknown to her, it was right in the same vicinity up where that happened, the next day where he was, no right where that happened, but right next where he stays and he's had another encounter and seen that thing. So exact same area, right? So they've seen that. So I say they'll can I come and I'll record an encounter that you've got, and it was mainly that was kind of it, doing the dishes, seen that. Actually, she got a bit of fright seeing this thing. So it was like it wasn't normal. We know what planes and that, but this was like a sphere type thing, and it was like moving about. You could see us this like bright light, whatever it was. So and the way it was flying, I mean, it just wasn't normal. And it was my mum's old best friend, right? I knew her. She stayed right across the road from me in that creepy, the creepy house I had. So she stayed right across the road from me. So I said to her, another thing, do you know the story of the black thing in the house? And she says, yeah, I know all about it. I says, right, I need to come and get the story off you. So I went and recorded the story, and it just gets a bit madder. You know what I mean? So I heard a bit of this story before, but didn't hear it at all, you know what I mean? So the story goes, they were out at some kind of spiritualist or event or something like that in Glasgow. And there was like different mediums and things like that, and people were getting readings and stuff like that. And my mum didn't get taken or something. So they invited the women back at another time, said, why don't you come through, and we can invite some people up and on a kind of different date or whatever else. So that was arranged. So the woman was coming through. I think she said she was facing Helensburgh. It's a place outside. It's a way out further past Glasgow. And so she was coming through to our house. And on arrival at our house, the medium got a bad feeling. She basically had turned and said, she goes like, there's a bad kind of feeling about this house. And she goes, what do you mean? She goes, well, and this is a true thing. So like the rowan trees are supposed to be places to ward off evil, right? So rowan trees, they don't grow they don't grow really, really quickly, right? So you see in most rowan trees, quite a lot of the time, they're quite small, they're not that big. We had like 2 massive rowan trees outside our house, right? As you walk through the front gate and up the stairs, there was one there and one there. Really, really big. I used to climb in them as kids. And then from that as well, we had another one right at the top of the garden, the back garden, right? So we're in a triangle of rowan trees, right? So in Celtic mythology and stuff like that, they're placed in high places to ward off evil, or some place to ward off evil. There's different kind of descriptions and stuff like that. But this medium said, she had a thing about that. She goes, there's bad kind of energy about this with this and whatever else. So that was the start of it. She then done the kind of mediumship, whatever it was, and doing readings and stuff like that. And she's go to my mum, and she ended up, she's like, I shouldn't tell you this, but I need to tell you. And she basically relayed that my dad was having an affair, right? And she relayed, she was too prominent, she relayed what lorry he drove and you could just see what car a woman drove or whatever else, and he basically gave a lot. She gave a lot away. My mum had suspicions anyway, I think, and she basically gave loads away that she wouldn't have known otherwise, right? And I think they relayed as well the story that happened to my sister's boyfriend in the room as well, and she said that actually, she goes, that wasn't a dream, that happened. She goes, this place is like just the energies here and stuff like that. So that triangle with the ribbon trees runs through that room, right? So that might mean nothing, right? But that's basically just to kind of add into that. It does run through that, with the triangle goes to the ribbon trees. So anyway, that was the story. It was after that came the week. My mum confronted my dad. They had the massive argument, and then this thing came in. So the story was the thing came in and went round my dad's legs, and they say that it didn't just disappear. It round his legs, and it was moving on the couch that fast they couldn't discern what it was, right? And then it disappeared. And then further on for that, the room next door, which was now a dining room at this point, the room next door had a bad stench coming from it. And this is what my mum's friend related. And she goes, and in the corner there was like a small man, about like 3 foot tall, grotesque. Just her description was personification of evil, right? And it disappeared. And that was like, I mean, I hadn't heard that bit of the story before. You know what I mean? But she had said that's what happened. That's what your mum related. Because I only ever went in that house like once after that. She never went in. But not long after that, anyway, they moved on, they split up, moved away and all that kind of stuff. But it was funny just how that kind of happening, and then you end up like the phenomena, because that kind of took part in my life, because they split up. I moved away to a different town and all that kind of stuff, and
yeah,
and but probably for the better in some respect, you know what I mean? But aye, so that was like that bit of the story, you know what I mean? Which was just totally bad, like, you know what I mean? How you're kind of just synchronistically finding out some of these bits for different stories and stuff.
Yeah, and it all adds up, and it's all connected.
Aye, I mean, but
wow.
It gets mad because one happened before, like that story, that whole kind of story happened after like probably about the third or fourth story I was kind of looking into and recording and stuff, right? Just when I started the podcast. The one before that, there was also a bit of synchronicity as well. So there's a story called The Silver Man, right, in the Bathgate Hills. And which is, as a crow flies for here, it's literally about 4 miles away, right? 5 miles away, something like that. I could walk to the Bathgate Hills for here. I walk the dog there in the mornings and stuff like that. So the story of the Silverman goes, I went to meet the guy called David who had the story. It was a story, it was like back in 88, and people had heard the story before, but I mean, he hadn't really relayed it to a lot of people. As in like a podcast, a book, or anything like that. There were people who had basically talked about the story, heard it off of somebody else, somebody's related to whatever else, and it's been out there, but he hadn't sat down and went through it and got it like kind of recorded and stuff like that. He's recording it now, and he's going to Facebook himself, I think now, right? But he met me on site, and he went through the story. So the story goes, it was 1988. Had like their first car or whatever else, and they're kind of or he's quite a new car, I can't remember what it was at the time, but he said he was out shopping and they had the kids in the car with his wife, and it was like in October or November. He said it was quite I can't remember exactly, but it was like a cold, crisp kind of like November night. So it was dark and it was cold. And he said, I was playing this game with the kids. Do you want to go left, or do you want to go left, want to go right? And in the car, just playing a game with them, and he would go left and he would turn here and turn there. He ended up, he was from Bathgate. He was from just a town next to Bathgate. It's called Bog Hall, right? And so he kind of turned about, ended up the Bathgate Hills, which is just at the top of the hills. So driving along the road, there's a kind of tight bend in the road, and it's like all the banky trees on the side, and got this tight bend. As he gets to the bend in the road, there's this thing at the side of the road, and it's like kneeling down, and it stands up, and it's quite tall, right? And it runs really, really, really fast, right? Through a fence, and it runs in a kind of horseshoe shape, it's kind of said, right? But really, this is kind of fleeting. He's getting coming towards this thing, driving a car. This thing stands up and just bolts, right? And he said it was almost like, the way he described it, he said it was big and bulky. It was like, he described it more like an etheric light, but it was big and bulky, right? And this thing ran, he says, when he got round the corner, his wife kind of turned around and said to him, "Did you see that?" And as he turned to his wife, the kids kind of turned around and shouted, "You've seen the Silver Man," right? And that's why they call it the Silver Man, right? But he said, because this thing wasn't silver, he said it was almost like, back in the day, if you ever take pictures and you've got the negatives, he said, in that kind of grey scale colour, the see-through grey scale colour, because it was like that. It was like that, and it was really, 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 really fast. And he said, the way he described it as well, he said the mad thing was, and because me and my wife talked about this for a bit, and I still couldn't fathom why. He goes, it was scowling at me, but I can't remember seeing its face. He goes, it's nuts, because I can mind it. I have this picture in my head of it turning and scowling at me, but I can't mind a face. He goes, it's just mad. He said, this thing was big and bulky, and it got up and it ran in these woods. And the bit in the woods you can actually see, because you went and look in further. I don't know if you'd been in further, but he said it on a horseshoe shape, right? Actually, there's an embankment that runs round. You can't see it for the trees, but if you go in there and you look round, there's an embankment that runs round in a horseshoe shape. So if it ran like that, if you maybe seen it doing that, it might have ran round that embankment. You know what I mean? But so that was the general kind of story of the Silver Man. He also said that he tried to do like self-regression to get a bit more of the story, but he said, I couldn't get past the bend. He goes, I go round the bend and it's like a black screen. He goes, I can't get past it. He said, I tried all that. He goes, I can't get past that. He said, I can't remember. It was days after it. He said, I was days after it. I said, it was just in a daze for what I'd seen. He said, I don't know why. I goes, I come into work. He was a psychiatric nurse. So he goes, I wasn't wanting to tell people about it, because like you're working that kind of job, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, mad and that. He said, but I was just dumbfounded with it. And he said, but I can't remember much after it. I can't remember how we got home. We got home and all that. He says, but it just feels like, and he goes, that's why I want to try and get regression on it, to try and find out if anything else happened. Because once I get out in that corner, I can go through regression, self-regression, and I can get to that point and go round that corner. He goes, but I can't get any further round that black screen. It's just like a black screen. And the funny thing enough is, like, Terry Lovelace, when I was talking to him, he explained the same scenario. He went through regression for something, and it was almost like there was one encounter he was trying to get Maury, and it was like a black screen. It was like he couldn't get round. It was like someone putting it there, and he couldn't get round it. But interesting. I mean, really interesting story. But the funny thing that links with for that story is where it took place. About 100 meters into the forest is where I had the fear feeling about 20 years prior.
Interesting.
In that bit. And it was like totally mad, because I was like, I actually went up before and I was like, this is a place. I had this kind of weird feeling. This is the actual place. And I kind of thought that was mad. And then at the time, I think I'd said to him after it. And then he was telling me about, it was loads of other stuff I cut out, I edited, right? Because he was talking about loads of other stuff. He was talking about like an abduction scenario he had when he was younger, and he thought it was linked to this place he stayed, right? And the place he stayed was about 1.5 miles from the Bathgate Hills. It was like at this I'm going to say the foot of the Bathgate Hills, but it was like on the way to the foot of the Bathgate Hills, a place called Bog Hall. And he said that place, when I stayed there, he goes like, I went missing when I was younger. I went missing for like hours on end, and they were out looking for me. They found me at 2:30 in the morning. And he goes, for me, he was only maybe about 5 or 6 or something like that. And he went to the shop to get something. Ended up, there's this kind of old quarry. He went to the quarry and he could see a digger, and he was playing on top of the digger and stuff like that. And he ended up, that's all I can remember. And he didn't turn up till like 2:30 the next morning, right? And he reckons something's kind of happened. He goes, that place is just strange. He goes, I stayed in that kind of house, and he goes, just in that area, it was just really, really kind of odd, and I had a lot of experiences. And even when I stayed there when I was older, I had like a house, my kids in that, and I felt like the place was haunted and all that. And I was like, wait a minute here. And it wasn't until I twigged actually after it, and I kind of asked him exactly where he stayed. And he stayed like when I moved to a friend's house back in the day when I had the sleep paralysis the first time of that, it was doors away from that.
Wow.
Doors away from where he stayed. And he had these experiences and stuff like that. I mean, doors maybe like it was like a good like 20 doors down or something like that, but same area.
Yeah,
Just
that's mad.
coincidence.
Yeah.
Coincidence. You know what I mean? Absolute nuts, like.
Yeah, I don't believe in coincidences anymore. There's
No,
too
I
many.
mean,
There's
I mean,
too
that was
many,
like,
man.
it was too much kind of like, it was like, I don't know, it was quite synchronistic, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because like in mind I was doing it and getting into it and looking at it. And I could always remember when I wanted to get into it and look at it, I was going to start off with first looking at, what's his name? Robert Kirk, the fairy minister, the one who disappeared and stuff like that back in the day. And he wrote The Secret Commonwealth and stuff like that. And I was going to be kind of looking at that. And it was funny because I was, at the same time, I was listening to things about Strange Familiars, and they were talking about basically other people looking into The Secret Commonwealth at the same time. There was two. One of them, I think originally I was looking at was a guy called Nate who did the podcast Penny Royale. If you not listened to Penny Royale, listen to that. Really, really great podcast. It's just like a series. It's really, really good. They were looking at The Secret Commonwealth to David Pan. And also they were looking at, so was the Newkirks to David Hellier, if you ever know the kind of programme Hellier. They were looking at it today to do with things. And at the same time, I heard that, I think I listened to Strange Familiars and they were talking to maybe Greg Newkirk or something about their investigations, and they were starting to look at things that were cropping up to do with the Secret Commonwealth and Pan and things like that. And I had just bought it. And it's not a book that you buy, like, because it's like the Secret Commonwealth's like it's just no, you know what I mean? It's not like a kind of well-known book that people go and buy.
Yeah.
And I bought it because I was wanting to kind of look at Robert Kirk and stuff like that. And just a synchronicity about that. And I kind of thought, I'm going to kind of look at Robert Kirk's story and get into all that and do that. And I had the Secret Commonwealth sitting there, and lo and got it, and I seen it. It was like they were kind of linking synchronicities, that they were looking at the Secret Commonwealth and David Pan, all that kind of stuff as well. I kind of thought, just a coincidence, you know what I mean? Anyway, but I'll kind of look at that. And then it was like one of the first stories. Somebody contacted me out the blue, and they were like saying that they'd seen orbs, and they see orbs in a town called Aberfoyle. And this was at the same time. And I was thinking about getting into it and doing it and trying to kind of get in and look at what we're going to do and look at stuff. And I kind of was going to research stuff. And I thought, I'll do that. And then I kind of thought, I'll just put it in the back burner the now, and I'll go and see the Silverman story, and I'll go and try and get Andy Swan and things like that. And this guy out the blue kind of contacted me and says, right, I'm seeing orbs and stuff like that in the town of Aberfoyle and recording them. So the town of Aberfoyle is where the Robert Kirk story originates from.
Okay.
So that's where the whole kind of fairy lore and all that kind of stuff, that's where it originates from. And I just kind of thought, it's just mad. And I went and spoke to that guy, and he had a few other kind of stories for there, but just mad. You know what I mean? But one other thing I'll just kind of touch on with that Silverman story. So I've done a few podcasts, and I was just kind of getting into it and stuff. And I was up there, I think it was a year after COVID or something. And it was like, there's quite a lot of snow. And I was up taking pictures in one of the standing stones. It's like, so in that place as well, I'm not added this in, but in that place where the Silverman happened, there's like burial mounds in there. And there's a place just next to it as well, just up the road. You can see it from it. It's like walking distance. It's called Cairn Papel. That's also got burial mounds, and it's a henge, right? It dates back 5,500 years, right? So there's always been kind of prominent stuff happening up there. So it's like it was a wooden henge, and then people buried their dead up there or done rituals or whatever else. Then it was taken over by the Christians, but there's like, you still get druids and that going up there at the solstices and stuff like that. But it dates back to about 5,500 years. It's the top of the prominent hill in the area. And there's other burial mounds as well, which is in that deep bit of forest I'm talking about. There's burial mounds there on the top of the hill. Or like there's one burial mound there anyway.
Wow.
And that's the same, the Silverman story originates from as well. So I'm up taking pictures of the sunset. I'm trying to get there's a standing stone right along the end. So it's past the Silverman bit, past that forest, and right along the end there's a standing stone. It's called the Clinking Stone. and I was trying to get a picture of the sunset sitting on top of the stone. So I'm taking pictures, hanging about for a wee bit. Quite deep snow. My car's parked. I had a 4x4 at the time, so it was kind of parked further up the hill. And so I was walking back, and I seen this couple, and I recognised the couple because when I was driving up there, I seen them walking up the hill. So I'd seen the water bottles were carrying and stuff like that. So I was up there for a wee while. When I'm walking back along the road to go and get my truck, I see them coming out the forest. It's called Ravenscraig Forest, right? And that's the Silverman Forest, right? So I see them walking out of there. And I say to them, oh, the guy talks to me, any good pictures? I said, aye, it's not bad. The camera's not that great, but it takes the odd decent picture. And he said, aye, and he was talking about phones and pictures and stuff like that. It was a couple in their like mid-50s or something. Or early mid-50s, whatever. So I'm kind of walking past, and I said, is that are they paths? See the path you've came out of? Does that take you to the top of the hill as well? So I wasn't sure of the ones that they've gone. So I wasn't in there all the time. And they said, yeah. They goes, if you follow that, it takes you up, just back up to the kind of top of the hill. I was like, right, fine. So I'm going to maybe try and get a couple of pictures before it gets totally dark. And I stepped into the forest, and I said, look, I better watch in case the Silverman gets me, just as a off-the-cuff remark to see if I'd heard the story, right? And the woman kind of turned around and looked at me and just said, I was kind of walking, she goes, have you seen something like? And I said, no. I said, some guy had seen something kind of back in the day. And she goes, what was it like? Some cryptid or something like that? And I said, and with that, like, a lot of folk didn't know that terminology and stuff. And I said, well, aye, because he'd seen something back in the day, in 88. It just kind of fleeting glimpses, something kind of running past, but it's like any prominent story and all that kind of stuff. And she goes, and she looked at her husband. This was a couple just out for a walk, right? And how you just bump into them. And she looked at her husband and said, oh, we've seen something. And I could see the look in their face. She was like, as if like, should I tell him or whatever else? And I said, what have you seen like? And I expected them to tell me the same type of story. And they said, well, last October, we'll come up here for walks, and we've seen like a white sphere, like a large white sphere go down behind the back of the hill. And just out of sight. They said, we know what planes and that look like because we stay on a flight path, but this thing, it was like a prominent sphere. And that's been seen up there as well before on different occasions, a white sphere. And there's been quite a lot of different sightings up there. And the guy then relayed to me that he basically said, we've seen that. And he said, it's not all we've seen. And I said, what else? And I said, look, I said to him, like, I recorded the podcast, spoke to the guy, so that's kind of what I did, whatever. And he says, well, that's not all we've seen. He says, when I was younger, I said, I seen a UFO when I was younger. And he basically told me the story when he seen a classic UFO when he was about 6 or 7. And he said, there was a lot of kids playing, and I seen this thing just hovering. It wasn't far away. And I shouted on somebody to come and see. This wee kid came along, seen it, he just laughed and ran away. Then he came, was looking at, and he said, then I got my older brother, and he came over. And by the time my older brother came, the thing was away. He said it was a classic, he goes, what you would call a classic UFO style thing. He said it was yellowish, I think, if I can remember correctly. And then he said, so he told me that, and he said about seeing some type of orb or something like that. And his wife says, no, everybody sees these things. And I was like, what do you mean? And she said, well, there was one time where it's almost like they know what you're thinking. She goes, I was looking at the window and I could see this thing coming out the cloud, no far away. And it was like a sphere or whatever else, or like some kind of light phenomenon. She goes, and as soon as I seen it, it was almost like it knew I had seen it, and it shot back up into the cloud. And she said that kind of comment, like, nobody sees these things. And the guy says, in 2015, they'd seen a massive black triangle over the town of Bathgate, like just going into the clouds. He said that this thing was massive. He said that I was searching the papers and all that because I don't know how nobody else seen it. He said it was like, the words he said, it was either like the size of 2 aircraft carriers or something like that. It was either 2 aircraft carriers or 2 aircraft hangars or whatever he said. It was like this. He goes, this thing was massive. He said it went into the clouds and he could even see it pulling a bit of cloud weight as it was going in. He goes, it was massive. And it wasn't reported anywhere at all. He goes, that was 2015. And then he says, at this point, so we're kind of chatting in that. At this point, it's getting dark and it's like freezing cold because it's like, it was just midwinter. And I said to him, look, I need to get these stories off you, right? The podcast and all that kind of stuff. And he says, right, aye. So I gave him my email address. And so I kind of went away. He never contacted me. So I was kind of kicking myself, you know what I mean, for not chasing it there. But I scoured the hills until I found them again. You know what I mean? So I used to go running up the hills. I go up running, I go walking. And one day, I was basically, I had it in my head, I was like, we'll go get some pictures of sunset. And I was going to go up to Kieran Papel, it's the most kind of prominent hill with the burial mounds. So I was going to get go up there and get a picture up there. So I kind of thought, I just had this thing came to my mind. I was like, go and get a picture. Can go up the day because it's quite a nice day. Got the sun's about to set, get a picture. I didn't do that all the time. It was just a kind of thought kind of came over and what's going to do it. So I went up and I got to Kieran Papel. And the time I got there, for the east coast, this hurricane came in right across the country. And it was just like dense fog, like total dense fog. I just got to see the sun a wee bit, and then before I kind of got, it was just kind of coming right across. This blankety fog just covered everything. It was really, really dense. So I walked back down to Kieran Papel, and you literally couldn't see, like, I'd say probably 5 to 10 metres in front of you. It was really, really dense. And I thought, I'll just go for a walk. So I walked towards the Silverman place, which is further up. But I wasn't going right to that, but there's a place I was walking towards that. So it's only maybe probably less than a mile between the two. And I got to the brow of this hill, and the couple came out the fog when I was getting the and I didn't recognise me. I was like, I kind of walked up and I was like, all right. And they're like, all right. And they recognised me. So the guy said, he goes, look, I wasn't wanting to contact you because I wasn't wanting to kind of come on or anything like that. I didn't feel comfortable kind of thing. I was like, fair enough. I was, that's fine. I said, I just want you kind of, he goes, I'll sit down with you and tell you them. He said, but I'm just no, it's no the time for me now. And I said, fine, no hassle. I mean, but he told me a few other stories in that as well, which was quite interesting. And the funny thing was, one of the ones that stuck in my mind, because one of the stories that Paul Sinclair told, it was the same kind of scenario. He said that, and it's funny how people didn't tie these things up together, because he was talking about, like, he had, one thing I did miss for the first story when I was talking to him, he said to me, when I was walking away, after talking my first one, relayed the stories first when I gave him the email address, I was walking away and he goes, the story when I was a kid, he goes, that's not what happened. And I said, what do you mean? He goes, I ended up in hospital, and there was a black ambulance took me to hospital, and I ended up with a lumbar puncture. And he goes, people questioned me. And he goes, and I said, I need to get me these stories, but he never kind of told me. He told me a bit after it, what happened and stuff like that, because he was in hospital, sick kids, and he got questioned on that day, and all that kind of stuff. There's more to it. He said, there's a lot more to it. Yeah. So anyway, he told me a story where he said, I never used to believe in, like, paranormal stuff. Right, because it's funny because, like, people separate UFOs with paranormal.
Yeah, yeah.
And he said until I met my wife, and I was in, and things would happen in the house, as in, like, just strange kind of like poltergeist stuff. But you know, if you're into this kind of field, you know that it comes hand in hand with the UFO abduction type scenarios, everything like that. It's all kind of linked. And he said that he heard, like, one of the stories that sticks in my mind. They said he heard a slap on the kitchen floor. And he went in to see what it was, and it was like a 2p piece. And he said it was almost like a porch. It was just basically like money appearing. It was like it happened a few times where things would just appear. But it was this thing. It was like somebody threw a 2p piece as hard as they could to the floor, without it jangling or rolling round. It just got slapped down. And he said that's happened a few times. And I had never heard that before, that type of story. But it's interesting because I heard a story Paul Sinclair relaying about guys that work in a garage, and the same was happening. Like, money was just falling out the air. It was like they were blaming each other, phoning each other. It was just like slapping the ground and stuff. And then listening recently to Grant Cameron's stuff, he talks about that as well, where ports and things appearing and all that kind of stuff. So interesting story, just bumping into that, the people. But I mean, that's how you know the stories are out there. I mean, you bump into people, man. The stories are there and stuff. You know what I mean? So that was kind of some of these stories. For the Bathgate Hills area, the one with the kind of, you said about the large triangle and all that kind of stuff. There's another one, a prominent one, which no one I've investigated. It's just a prominent one in the area, just to let you know what the area is like. So from the Bathgate Hills, right, from the kind of burial mounds, Bathgate Hills, you've got, as the crow flies, you've got about 3 or 4 miles to Armadale. There's multiple different sightings and that happened there. Police officers had seen, in, I think it was 86, had seen a UFO in 86. They said it was like described it as a flying clothes pole, like a long kind of like cylindrical type object. They'd seen that. I know two brothers who'd seen the same thing. They never came forward, and they seen a different thing. They seen like a kind of UFO type thing. But it was like, so this was described as police officers that seen it. It was 86. Somebody else came forward to us and they'd seen same type of thing. It was like an orange oblong type thing in Armadale around about the mid-80s as well. And also seen like a triangular kind of thing in the sky. So that was the town of Armadale. You've got the A70 encounter, which is about 15 miles away from there, towards the hills, which the guys with the abduction scenario happened in 92. The Silverman encounter, which is about a mile away from the Cairn Papal, happened. You've got the town of Bathgate, this thing, the guys talking about like the 2015 large triangle kind of thing, and all his accounts, that's the same area, it's literally like a mile or 2 miles away. The Bob Taylor incident, which is one of the most kind of prominent stories in Scotland, where a forestry worker had came over basically walking through the forest with his dog, and he seen this landed craft middle of the forest, and these two metallic like ball structures with appendages came out the craft and he could smell the sulphur smell, and he blacked it. But he woke up, he had like his trousers were ripped. They tried to drag him into the craft. Police were involved in everything. Like the police believed him. This guy was quite a respected guy. There's been multiple kind of books on it and documentaries on it and stuff like that. But this was like 1979, right? 1979, that happened, and then basically these things tried to grab him in the craft. Police came, they believed them. They think they even said it was an assault by unknown persons. And there was landing marks in the middle of the forest, and there was tracks coming out of something. If something had looked like there was been appendages landed, and then tracks had come out, something heavy had been sitting, and then tracks coming out of whatever was sitting there. And the people believed it because he was a believable guy, and he was like a gen up kind of rational kind of guy. He wasn't like any crazy person or anything like that. But that was investigated further with the police and all that kind of stuff as well. The interesting thing was, though, the story about the guy who I met up the Bathgate Hills. His story happened in 77, which was 2 years prior, in the same area, roughly. Wow. Right? And that area is only about 5 miles from Cairn Papal. You've then got the whole Bonnie Bridge phenomena that people like talk about, the whole kind of Scotland phenomena, and Bonnie Bridge, and it's not in they call it the Falkirk Triangle, which is other direction, Bonnie Bridge about 15 miles other direction, right? And there's hundreds. You're talking like about 600, if no more, sightings within very very late 80s to late 90s. Right across that, and the whole area. It wasn't just Bonnie Bridge, it stretched into like the Lothians where I was. But you're talking like maybe a radius of about 30 miles, and there's like loads of sightings, different craft, different phenomena, loads of stuff. They even went into Parliament. Actually, there was like people put petitions into Parliament about it, and MPs and all that got involved and everything, because there's that many things seen in this whole area. So there's like loads of stuff kind of running about this area. And as I said, it's like there was that many kind of stuff. It's like if you look over a year span, there's maybe no anything, but if you look over, like as I said, like a 20-30 year span, you know what I mean, there's loads, you know what I mean. And one came to me, and it's a story, and the guy relayed the story to me wasn't one it relayed on the podcast at all. And totally gen up guy, listened to the story, he came in and recorded it, but he said, like, I didn't want to be on the podcast. It was my job. I'm not going to relay what his job is, but for in his job, it wouldn't go good for him. You know what I mean? So he basically said that I was just, because I was higher up in my role, because I wouldn't mind relaying it. So he had went through when he was younger. He the whole kind of, when he said he recorded it, he said you can relay it. He goes, but I'm not wanting to be on recordings or nothing like that. I since asked him if I changed his voice, would he let me put it on? And I managed to change his voice, and it's not the best recording in the world because the voice has changed and stuff like that, and you can't hear the kind of truth in the voice. It does sound to me truthful in it, but in regards to it, it's like you can't hear him right as a person because it's like the voice changed and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
That being said, I've met the guy a few times. And I believe him. It's totally wholeheartedly. And it's he stays in an area which is at the epicenter of all that in the 90s, right? And he had seen, to cut a long story short, and a good recording it, I mean, but he basically had seen beings. He said beings would appear outside, right? Outside his house. He could see them through the window. And then they would just manifest into the room. He said it would start off like he would see a green tinge. It was almost like a green light at the back of the wardrobe or through the wardrobe. It was almost like they could come through. It wasn't like they're coming out the wardrobe, but it was like you could see them like kind of passing through. And he said he used to just hide for them. Also, he goes right through his life when he was younger. This happened. He said like 3 or 4 beings would appear outside, and he'd kind of stay that kind of farmstead kind of thing. And he said they would just come in and he would just hide under the covers, and that's mainly what he could remember all the time.
Wow.
He said when he got to an age when he was maybe about early 20s, he was away on holiday, and he was with his friends and stuff like that. There was like only him and his friend, and they came back to the apartment at night. He said they only had like a couple of beers. He wasn't drunk or nothing like that. And tired, went to his bed, and he woke up. And there's quite a bit more to the story, right? But just kind of gone over it briefly. But when he woke up, he said he seen this thing. He was lying on his back, I think. But when he turned and looked, he could see this thing's a leg next to the bed, right? And he said the way he described it, he said it was almost like if you looked at a fly's leg, extremely close up, right? Extremely close up, so you can see its hair sticking out its leg, but really, really sparsely and thick. He said that's what it looked like. He said but it was white leg. And he said I got up and I could see this thing. It was like a mantis type thing. He said it was like a mantis type. There was like beings in the room at one side, and he said he actually got up and he seen this thing. He said it looked unsteady on its legs. He goes, actually, it put his face into me when I turned round and seen it. And he said that it had like kind of like a in between a grey kind of mantis type face. He said it had like what he could remember. It had 3 nubs for fingers or something like that.
Wow.
And then this leg type thing, you know what I mean? So he had that experience when he was younger, when he was on holiday. It was in his room. He said he was in that room. And then there was like a thing when he said at the same time, there was a UFO sighting, and it was like on the telly the next day. It was in the same area and all that kind of stuff, because I can remember it. A totally believable guy, right?
Yeah.
Totally rational. And ended up, so he told me that story. And he said another thing is he went back to when he went back to stay where he stayed, him and his wife went back and moved in, or I don't know if they were married at the time or not, but I need to actually go back and listen to the story again. That was a good story. And then he moved in to the same property, or one of the properties next to where it was. They heard growling in the house, and that's an odd thing. So for about 6 months, they would hear growling, right? Like a growling in the house. I know that's just totally kind of far away from like the whole kind of UFO subject, but he would hear growling in the house, and he wouldn't know where it was coming from. And then this went on for a wee while, and other things like I think you see they had like almost like poltergeist activity, apparition type things you can see at the corner of your eye, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
You hear things at night outside as well, like a baby crying, and things like that as well. And then eventually the whole kind of the whole growling. He got up one night and just shouted. He's like, "Well, you F off," you know what I mean, or whatever. And the thing stopped. It stopped after that.
Interesting.
But he'd seen things as well, and he had a few different experiences. His mum and dad seen things as well, but that was up at the same time, and would have been running about the same vicinity as a lot of stuff happening back in the day when the UFO activity was going on. Interesting,
man.
But
what was the other beings that he saw? Did he say what they looked like?
They look like, you say, they look like your typical greys, but they're whiter.
Wow, man.
See, that was that, and I mean they were like typical greys, but they were like whiter, and they would just come through. You could see them to start off with, and they would just manifest into the room. But you could tell this green tinge would like appear at the back of like his wardrobe and stuff like that, and those when they were, you could tell when they were coming.
Yeah. And did he get taken and stuff like that?
You can't remember. That's the thing. You say they can't remember. He, but the only thing, the main kind of story he could remember is that one when he was on holiday, when he seen them in the room. There was like a few of them in the room, and they could see the mantis type thing that was standing in the back of him, and look, he was on his stomach, but he kind of woke out it, and it was almost like it got a fright. They said the thing was startled that I was awake.
Yeah.
And he said it was almost like unsteady on his feet, and then it kind of just pushed its head in towards me, and then I blacked out.
Wow, man.
But I absolutely kind of like just mad stories, like, you know what I mean? So that was kind of some of the main stuff of the area, some of the stuff I've picked up, you know what I mean? But there's like, there's so much more out there.
So interesting.
I mean, there's so many more stories out there, you know what I mean? So I want to kind of do a wee bit more in regards to, there's the whole kind of story, the big grey man of Ben McDoo, which is like up in the Cairngorms and stuff like that. So that's like a Bigfoot type encounter. It's been, I mean, a guy called Affleck Gray wrote a book back in the 90s about stories that he'd collected off of climbers and stuff like that, and prominent climbers as well, you know what I mean, and seen things. So we're looking at kind of do a wee bit of investigation and stuff like that, you know what I mean? But that's mainly about it, story-wise, you know what I mean? As I said, I think I've relayed most of the ones that I've had back in the day. I mean, there's a lot more in there, you know what I mean, that I could probably go through in regards to try to remember them all.
Yeah, man. Super interesting. Can I ask you what you think that the Silver Man is? Because when you were saying it, I got like a Bigfoot vibe.
Well, I mean, it seems almost like a Bigfoot type thing, right? But at the same time, he said it was like some type of etheric light at the same time. He said it was a thing, and it was like the shape of a man, if not bigger. But it was like, I don't know if it was like a kind of between being see-through a light or whatever else, I don't know. But there's been other stories up there as well, which I didn't relay, that people had said that when they're at Cairn Papal, they've been paced out at night with something. I don't know what that is, but what I kind of think it is in that area. And there's one story I will tell you, which I've not mentioned, right? But in that area, I don't know if it's maybe something that's like some type of, I mean, just hypothetically, you know what I mean? Let's say it's some type of energy or some type of being that's protecting like that area because of the burial mounds or something like that. You hear of that in ancient Indian lore. You get like kind of dogmen type things are always associated with burial mounds and things like that. And there's always, it's either like a protection thing or there's just maybe something there. I mean, it's like the energies and stuff like that. But it's interesting how you get a melting pot of all this stuff together that's there. And it's funny because I was talking about the story of Silver Man, about that place being weird. And my wife says, because we're up there with the dog and stuff like ever since. And she says, where is that? Where's that about? And I tell her, she goes, well, that place is weird. And it's funny for her to say that because she's not into this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And I'd mentioned something to my oldest, who's only 11, about the Silver Man story, because he was just asking about Bigfoot and stuff like that. He's not into anything like that, right? But he was asking, because I didn't relay about the podcast stories and stuff. But he said, that's that weird place. And I said, what do you mean? He goes, that's that place I seen that thing. I was like, what thing? And he said, and it was no bullshit on it. He said, when we were up there by a walk with the dog, and he said, I was lagging behind. And he said, I was looking through the trees. This is the story he showed. He said, I was looking through this tree, and I had a gap in the tree. And he said, through the tree, he said, I could see this thing. I had a round head. He said, he goes, if you can imagine, he said, it looked like an owl, but it was a white face, and it had black round eyes, but it didn't have a mouth. He said, that's what I seen. He goes, I got a fright and I just ran to catch up with you. And I said, why did you not tell me? He goes, I didn't think you'd believe me. I'm into all this. Believe you.
Yeah, wow, man.
But I got me draw it and stuff like that, and he drew it. And I went back up since. I didn't try and bring this other way to scare him or anything like that, you know what I mean? But I don't much would scare that boy. But he was adamant. He goes, I seen this thing. It was like through trees, and I could see it, and it was looking back at me. And he said, I just kind of ran away. He said, but it was just a white face, and that was it. And
interesting.
Another interesting story I'll tell you for kind of one of the stories. I mean, but there was my friend sent me a picture. It was a picture he basically at a wedding, right? A place called Markinch up in Fife. It's over the kind of water, and it's not too far for you. It's maybe about 30 miles away, if not a wee bit more. And he basically, it's funny because like one of the guys I talked to today with like the podcast that comes on now and again, Mark Anderson, he was from Markinch, and he was telling me about the place, there's kind of crazy energies and stuff like that, and there's a stone circle up there and things like that, and it's quite interesting. And he was talking about ley lines and all that kind of stuff, and I said, maybe I need to go up there at one point. And it wasn't long after that, my friend, who's no into this at all, but he knew I was into it, had sent me a picture. He goes, look at this picture if you're into it. And basically it was like 3 girls at a wedding who he knew, and they were getting a picture at the wedding, so 3 of them are kind of cuddling, getting a picture. And when you first glance at the photo, you just see 3 of them together. But when you look at the picture, right, in between, so you've got, like, imagine you've got a head, and a head, right, and you've got the girls' hairs and all that, so you can't see past them, right? It looks like somebody stuck their head in between their, so you can only see it through there, right? And it's got, like, you see the chin and the teeth, right? And this thing's grimacing, right? This thing's grimacing, and it's you can hardly see it, right? But it's there. It's literally, it's no. I can even, when he showed me stuff, I goes like, that's probably just like a what would you call it? An overlay, another photo or something. Or maybe it's their teeth. It's totally different teeth.
Yeah.
Right. It's totally different teeth. The thing's grimacing, and it's no got see that bit between your nose and your lip. It's no got that. It looks creepy. I mean, it's no, and it's definitely, it's got a shadow. It's actually got a shadow where this thing is. And the cameraman had said to them, who was in the picture of these? And they're like, there was nobody in the picture of this. They were like at the back, lined up against this tree, and this thing, whatever it was, it must have been, see, for that thing to be there and name no to know it must have been like right under their hair and up against their face for them.
Man.
And it's like it's probably one of the most prominent paranormal pictures I've ever seen.
Yeah.
I've not shared that a lot for the fact that I've not had permission to share it in regards to the girls in the picture, and the fact that people would just say, oh, that's just somebody having a laugh or something. I know my mate involved, and he basically knows them. Yeah. And they showed me the chat they had about. They were like you see the chat. They were saying, well, that was mega creepy, that thing, whatever that was. And the interesting thing, the synchronicity came for that as well, was a couple of weeks after that, I got invited to a wedding at the same place.
Oh, wow.
Overnight. Nothing happened. But
oh, man,
when we're done this, I'll show you the picture.
Yeah, I can't wait to see that. It's interesting as well, because I've got a good friend called Josh. Very similar situation. His girlfriend's got a picture, and it's probably the most amazing paranormal picture I've seen. And it's not out there. They don't want to put it out there, but it's an actual photograph. And he's took a picture of the photograph on his phone. So that's where I've seen it, on his phone. But it's an actual photo, and it's I think it's one of the girl's friends standing in the bedroom. And then in the background, there is another little girl in the background. And I said to him, like, are they sure that that's not another little girl? And they're like, no. They took the picture came out, and that's what was there. And there was no little girl in that room. And it's an amazing picture to see. And I keep saying, can I share it, please, man? But they're not having it.
This was, in regards to this, it was, I kind of thought straight away, that's a double exposure. But it's no. It's definitely no. I mean, see, actually, when you look at the picture and you lighten it right down and you go through it, in the context, if you actually just show the pictures of the teeth and that, it doesn't do it any justice. But in the context, when you see it with the girls fully there and that, it's like, it's weird, like, it's mental. It absolutely really is weird.
Yeah, man. I'm looking forward to seeing that.
Listen, I'm going to need to go to the toilet, right? If you give me 2 seconds.
Yeah. Cool, man. So it's amazing when you see a picture like that, though. The person doesn't want it shared. They don't want it put out there.
No, I mean, it's no, I think I asked the question. No said no, but I think one of them stays further afield now, and it's like getting a hold of her or whatever else. So I could probably track them down and ask to share it. I don't think anybody wanted to share it. Yeah. You share at a certain point where you could probably see, but it's an interesting picture. But I mean, see things like that anyway. I'm always a great believer when you put them up, people just debunk them. You know what I mean? They don't know the context behind the people and the stories and who it is and where the pictures came from. And I mean, if you don't know them, I mean, for me, for example, the whole mum and dad story, I know that 150% happened because I know my mum and dad. You know what I mean? But somebody else listening to the story might think, I could have just made that up, or it could be bullshit, or it could be this, could be that, or it could just be a cat. Or what? I mean, or rationalise it as something, but because
I believe it, man.
Because you know the context behind it, it makes it more kind of real. You know what I mean? But
yeah.
So I mean, that's about it now. We're just kind of plodding on. So just trying to get more stories out. That's it. I mean, it's trying to get people to come forward with stories. So I know there's more in this area. It's just trying to get people to come forward. That's the thing. You know what I mean? Interesting.
So it's great what you do, man, because you're creating this full picture of your area that is fascinating, man.
That's the thing. There's been a lot of people before me going through the stories and things like that. I mean, there's some new ones there I've got, you know what I mean? But in regards to that, like yourself as well, you do the same, you know what I mean? But it's just trying to I do this because I like it, you know what I mean? That's it. And I've got an interest in it. You know what I mean? It's like it's nothing to do with fame or fortune, because you'll not get that.
That's it.
I mean, because I want to genuinely get more stories about the area. Or even further afield as well. But you know yourself, when you follow the subject, you look at a lot of stuff, and it's just wee bits and pieces of the puzzle. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You're not going to get it from NASA, the US government, anyway.
Not yet. They might start slowly coming round. We'll see. I doubt it, though. I doubt it.
Yeah, I do.
Chris, man, this has been absolutely fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing your experiences and your work. It's awesome, man. It really is.
Cheers, Tommy. Thanks very much for having me. And I'll hopefully maybe get a chance to talk to you soon, and you can come and talk to me.
Yeah, I'd love that, man. 100%. Can you tell the listeners where they can find you and your podcast?
Yep. You can find us at the Scottish Paranormal Podcast. You'll get us on any podcasting host site like Podbean, iTunes, Spotify, things like that. If you're just audio only, you can get us on YouTube. You can find me on Facebook under Scottish Paranormal Podcast, same as Instagram as well. Social media channels, things like that. So yeah, that's me. So, and if you need to ever contact us, my email address is scottishparanormalpodcast@gmail.com. Pretty straightforward.
Awesome, man. And I will share the links in the show description so people can find you. Chris, I'd love to come down to your area, man. We'll have to have a beer and show me some of the sites.
Yeah, more than welcome, mate. Get over and I'll show you them. You know what I mean? So we'll get around them. All
awesome. Right. Thanks a lot, brother. Have a good night, and I'll speak to you soon.
Show you this picture.
Yes.
Something's in your room. You can't move. You can't speak. It's a horrible feeling.
You know, you're looking out into the darkness and then you see a figure, but it's darker than the darkness.
I just get this like really creepy feeling, and I see this like shadowy, demon-looking figure in the front seat of the car.
She used to come into my room at night and stand right by my bed, and I just was petrified.
I remember I saw something fly by my bedroom window. We heard the bathroom door shut. So then we looked out my bedroom window down the hallway, and the bathroom door was wide open.
So we came around the bend and we saw eye shine. This thing stood up. I mean, it stood up, and it had high pointed ears. It had a snout, had a long arm, and it grabbed the deer.
What?